talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van range, helping business owners to work better and live better. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van Centre.
With your latest sports headlines, I'm Matt Hutchinson. Good morning. A boozy holiday enjoyed by England's players down under is going to be investigated by their bosses. They had a mid-Ashes break in the beach town Noosa, where some players reportedly drank excessively before losing that third test. But Steve Harmison has told talkSPORT it's not a black and white situation.
If they've gone 60 bender, bang them against the wall and they get what they deserve. But if they've been caught having a couple of pints in the middle of the afternoon, when the world is ending, I'm not hammering them for this.
Meanwhile, Nathan Lyon and Pat Cummins have both been ruled out for the rest of the series. On to football now, and Alexander Isak's had surgery on a fractured leg, and Liverpool say they've currently got no time frame for his return. Jason Cundy is flabbergasted Isak wasn't stretchered off at Spurs.
It's their job to care for his well-being, for his fitness and his health. And like I said, this ain't just Liverpool, by the way. They're all at it. You watch, players get taken off and there's a stretcher. Get the little buggies on.
talkSPORT understands Isak's potential season ender means Mo Salah won't be leaving Liverpool in January. Oxford have sacked Gary Rowett with the club in the Championship relegation zone. He took over just last December. Raul Jimenez now has the joint best penalty conversion rate in Premier League history. That's after scoring in Fulham's 1-0 win against Forest. The striker has 11 from 11, the same record as Yaya Toure. And Luke Humphries has called 71-year-old Paul Lim a legend who he loves to bits. The 2024 world champion beat Lim 3-0 at Ali Pali last night.
talkSPORT News.
A man's due in court in Swindon this morning, charged with 56 sexual offences against his ex-wife. And there are calls to replace non-crime hate incidents with intelligence reports. Emma's got more news at past.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. Get a free vehicle safety check at all of our 600 centres nationwide to keep you safe on the road. QuickFit. Drive away happy every time.
We're expecting a generally cloudy day for most parts of the UK, with light rain for some. Brief brightness is possible, though, over in the west.
Hello, very good morning to you. You're listening to Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan, and we're live on talkSPORT this morning. So, Fulham edged past Nottingham Forest by a 0-0 last night. But what does it mean for the battle down the bottom of the table? West Ham fans, how concerned are you about your relegation plight? And with full crew off, do you trust your owners to pull a rabbit out of the hat in January? Meanwhile, AC Milan against Como in Perth is off. Does this kill off the idea of European games being played abroad, or will there be a new initiative to try and bridge the gap between those who don't have and the Premier League's dominance? Plus, could the revolving door in the Spurs boardroom be set to swick back open again? Mikel Arteta, does he think that cups are secondary? And what really happened in Noosa? This is Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan. We're live on talkSPORT. Hello, very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Merry Christmas wherever you are, one and all. Simon, good morning.
Morning, mate.
Last day before Christmas for you.
Indeed.
Have you paid for someone to wrap all your presents up?
I have a few parcels I'd like to deliver to a few people, but what am I, some sort of Arthur character that has people wrap things for him?
I would imagine
perfectly capable of passing my delivery to the concierge and getting him to do it. Yes, absolutely.
I was going to say.
Absolutely.
I hate wrapping presents, don't you? I honestly, actually...
I do. I'm absolutely used to it. I don't.
So am I. Sellotape everywhere.
I know my limits.
Yes, and that's certainly one of mine. Fulham found that they could get past the Nottingham Forest last night. The limits of Nottingham Forest's issues came at the front end of the team. Didn't look like scoring last night, and the game was decided by a penalty. It wasn't a great game of football, but what it does do is change the complexion of the table at the bottom of the table. Points-wise, Leeds on 19, Forest on 18, above West Ham on 13, and Burnley in 11th. Is it Burnley and Wolves going down, and then a fight for one other, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you sensible money would probably look at West Ham, because I don't think they're a good side, despite the fact they brought Nuno in to get themselves back into some sort of order. They look all over the place as a side. They were dreadful on the weekend. Okay, they've got a result. The other weekend they've got a result. In previous games that have shown some degree of progress, but I think West Ham are a poor side. I think Forest, fine. Look, I mean, if you're 5 points clear of the bottom three coming into Christmas after a dreadful start, you're not panicking. You've got a couple of games coming up that, you're going to look at West Ham at the beginning of January and think to yourself, there's a game that determines potential outcomes. But Sean's gone in there. He's taken 10 points from 8 games. If he takes that ratio going forward, he finishes in mid-table. So I don't look at Sean Dyche and Nottingham Forest, despite the fact they might have looked a bit toothless, which is ironic because when I watched Fulham the other day, they looked very toothless against Palace. They look like a very good side, but no penetration up top. So, the game gets won by a penalty, by a player that, seems to be a fraction of himself, the player that he was at Wolves others years ago prior to him having that injury. Yeah. So I don't think I think the bottom three are likely to be the bottom three. I hope it's not for West Ham, because obviously they're a London club, and despite my years of rancour with David Sullivan, I wouldn't, and obviously certain sections of the West Ham fan base that spend their entire life bitching and whining about everything. They'll have something to bitch and whine about when they're in the Championship, won't they? But I don't want them relegated because they're a London club. But I think if you look at the bottom three, it's difficult to see past them. Leeds have got themselves together. They've suddenly made Elland Road a fortress. If you look at the games they've just gotten points out recently, you'd have thought that they'd have struggled to get points out of any of those games, given the teams that they've played, and they've got lots of points out of all of them. And so Farke has sort of quelled the background noise about his position, changed the way that the team are playing, and got results. Calvert-Lewin put his handbag down and started scoring goals. And Forest are okay. I think Forest are a good enough side to sail away from relegation challenges.
Well, one of the things that Forest have done is obviously they have improved under Sean Dyche, but he's driving standards. And last night after the game, he actually was quite disappointed with the way that they'd approached the match itself, and said they're a bit too wishy-washy.
When you have possession, it's got to mean something. It's got to have a purpose to it. And we just looked a bit wishy-washy. I thought, the ball's going into the box, not of any real quality. Omari put a really good ball in, it must be said, in the first half, which caused them trouble. And there's a good chance early on from Callum, I think, to Igor. But other than that, we never really found the moment to really open them up with any real penetration, as I said. Lots of half-decent, steady play, but never really affected them anywhere near what we'd like to, and certainly not as effective as we have been this season since I've been here.
Goal scoring is a massive issue at the bottom of the table, and if you haven't got someone who puts the ball in the back of the net, then that causes you a huge, huge issue. I mean, Fulham obviously have managed to get over the line last night thanks to a penalty. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has started scoring for Leeds United.
Don't concede that.
That's absolutely imperative.
I mean, yes, it does. I mean, ultimately, the reasons why you're at the bottom of the table is because you don't score enough goals. And the reasons why you don't score enough goals is because you aren't able to buy the best players to be able to achieve it, and you haven't got the best sides. Conversely, when Palace were in the Premier League with me, we had the second top scorer in the division, Andy Johnson. But we still got relegated. So it's as important to be able to not concede goals as it is to score them. And of course, when you get the one thing about Forest last year, which was remarkable, was their goals to chances ratio, which was off the charts. I remember seeing people do analysis about the amount of shots that they had on target against the goals that they scored, and the conversion rate of people like Chris Wood was phenomenal.
Yeah, really good.
And it was unsustainable because Forest were operating at almost 100% in every single game. Their outcomes were being determined by a team at full throttle in terms of every player being at their absolute zenith in terms of performance. And that's not sustainable. It's not because I don't want it to be. It's just unrealistic to think that it is. And so there's a drop-off. And that drop-off has come as a result of managerial appointments and misconnects or disconnects between people that have been brought in to do better jobs than they subsequently did. But if you look at some of the players that Forest have got in their side, they've lost players. I know they've lost Elanga and people like that, but they're still a decent side.
Do you know, it's really interesting because I think if we sit here now, we all think, probably not in Forest, they'll be all right. They've got Sean Dyche, they've got good enough players, they've got enough goals to be fine.
Yeah.
And I think some people probably thought that about West Ham United. But I look at West Ham United now and I really worry for them. I look at their goal difference, -16. If you look at the table itself, they're 5 points behind Nottingham Forest. But they've conceded so many more goals, 10 more goals than Nottingham Forest at this stage of the season. And their goal difference is -16 compared to Forest's -8, Leeds -7, Fulham -3. That is a huge, huge problem.
It is, but I don't know how many teams get relegated on goal difference.
Well,
I mean, ultimately, not that many. I mean, there's always a distinction between the team in third place and the team in fourth place. And
it's more like a narrative and a trend, isn't it? You're conceding far too many goals.
Sure, but I mean, if you get beat 5-0 by Liverpool and then go and beat the teams around you 1-0, then it doesn't really matter, does it? It's what it does to the spirit of the club and how you manage that. And of course, Forest, last year built their stock in trade by being a side that were capable of transitioning and very quickly and defending very well. So that's not going to be lost. And you look at the players they've got in there, and they brought players back like Douglas Luiz, who were players that were, exalted at Villa a couple of years ago, that have gone to Italy and not had a great time over there and come back. So they've got players in that side that can score goals. Callum Hudson-Odoi, albeit he can be in and out, is a good player that can create opportunities. The boy up top has scored goals at the beginning of the season. I think Sean has just tightened them up, stabilised them, made sure that they're much more difficult to beat than they perhaps were at the beginning of the season. And again, I go to the point with Forest, which is I don't think they're going to be having a problem. I think the problems are for the bottom three sides. I thought Scott Parker, ironically, would do better this year with Burnley, because I thought their remarkable defensive record in the Championship was so remarkable that it would translate into the Premier League. And there's no reason why it shouldn't to some extent. Or you're going to ship more goals irrespective of how good you defensively are in the Championship, because you've got Championship players. And there's a difference between Championship players and Premier League players, but there isn't that much difference between top three Championship sides and bottom 3 or 4 Premier League sides. So you would have expected Burnley to be just a little bit better than they currently are. But Wolves are dead men walking. So I think the bottom 3 are the bottom 3.
And if that's the case, then West Ham are sleepwalking into relegation. We had lots of protests about the owners at the early part of the season.
Do you think West Ham, do you think this is the bottom?
I think they're in massive trouble, West Ham United. And I think they're in massive trouble because of two things. One, they haven't responded to Nuno Espirito Santo coming in. I thought there was going to be a bigger and much more stark contrast between how they played under Graham Potter and how they did under Nuno Espirito Santo. I was very surprised about some of the early team selections that he made. I went to Leeds with them earlier in the season, and he played Ollie Scarles out of position twice in a row. The Brentford game that I went to at home was absolutely dreadful. One of the worst home performances I've seen for a very, very long time. There seems to be a lack of fight at West Ham United, whereas at Leeds you've got a lot more of that. The crowd get behind them. I feel like the crowd have always become apathetic. They're so disenfranchised with the ownership. They're so annoyed about the way the club has been run over the course of the last 10 years that they feel as if it's almost they almost feel as if it's inevitable they're going to go down, because they don't trust the owners to pull something out of the fire. I was looking at the statistics over the strikers earlier today. Nicholas Füllkrug is going to leave the club in the January transfer window. They need to buy a striker who scores goals. But under Sullivan and Brady, they've got such a bad record of signing strikers. Out of the 56 strikers that they've signed, only 6 of them have scored 20 or more goals for the club in their entirety. 20 goals, not 20 goals per season, 20 goals in their careers after signing for West Ham United. They've got to get someone who can come in and score goals. But do you trust your owners to do that? And the West Ham fans were really annoyed this weekend, because I don't know if you saw this stuff about David.
It'd be fascinating to go through that list of the 56 players. I mean, I know we're not going to, but see who they signed and what stage their careers were and why these players didn't hit the ground running and what style of football. Because obviously over the years, the West Ham fans have cried about Sam Allardyce's style of football. They've been unhappy about other people's style of football. They were unhappy David Moyes' style of football. And ultimately, David Moyes was kind of half-handed out the door, albeit I think he ran out of gas at West Ham, and I think it was almost getting to the point where it was mutual dissatisfaction with one another. I mean, there is a style of play issue, there is a quality of team issue, and the West Ham fans say, well, that's not good enough. But when you actually analyse it and look at the nuances and say, well, that's a great statistic to pull out and look at Karen or whoever's recruiting for them, David, and say, well, hang on, these amount of players that you've bought. I remember them spending 40-odd million quid under Manuel Pellegrini on the boy Felipe Anderson, who was an absolute waste of time. So there's been times where they've gone and backed managers. So when you talk about owners, and I know that I always find myself defending owners, but when we talk about the positioning of the circumstances around who gets bought and who doesn't get bought, you have to bring managers into the conversation, list the managers.
Is it managers, or is it technical directors, sporting directors, or is it someone on a laptop somewhere deciding that you should sign this player? Because one of the big issues at West Ham is there seems to be a lot of cooks that are involved in signing players.
Well, that's the supposition. I remember years ago when Trevor Francis was my manager at Palace, and obviously he worked for David Sullivan at Birmingham, and the constant messaging was that David Sullivan bought players from Rothman's Guide for Football, right? And that was the influence. And so that will stick with people in their minds. But at the same time, I think that the idea that players are just bought in isolation, in a vacuum, that doesn't have managers' footprints or fingerprints over them is nonsense. It might not be what managers ultimately want when they draw up their Christmas list of who they think they should have, but they will be in the conversation, and they will be in a conversation with the manager saying, this is a player that we can get for X amount of tens of millions of pounds. These are the kind of cost implications that the player will involve. If you don't want him, we won't get him.
But some of the decisions that they've made is that they bought someone like Sebastian Haller, they bought him for a Pellegrini setup, and then they changed Pellegrini and bought in David Moyes, and obviously he doesn't fit that system.
Yeah.
You've bought a manager for...
But that's the buggeration of being an owner. You look at it and say...
But get your manager recruitment right as well as your player recruitment
perhaps
right.
Perhaps managers sell you pups, and I can assure you that they do.
Probably.
They tell you that they'll play with the players that they've got, and they'll adapt their thinking to the players that they've got, and then they do the polar opposite when they get in the job.
But do you think that they've appointed the right managers since they sacked David Moyes or allowed David Moyes to leave? Julian Lopetegui.
No,
Graham Potter.
But I think
Nuno Espirito Santo.
I think Nuno Espirito Santo, I think, will sort out some of the problems at West Ham, but it may be too late for them. This idea that when they brought in Lopetegui that it was a new brand of football, I sat there going, well, have you watched the teams that he coaches? Potter. Well, I have mixed emotions about Graham Potter, because I think he was cooked into a bigger recipe than he actually was. I think he did a good job at Brighton. He failed miserably at Chelsea for lots of reasons, some of them of his own making. And then he spent a lot of time auditioning for jobs, not doing them, and perhaps that was to do with the amount of money he was getting out of Chelsea, and didn't want to compromise that. And he landed at a West Ham setup, and he just didn't do the job. So the answer to the question is inevitably yes. But by the same token, they treated David Moyes in a certain way, didn't they? When Moyes came in, he did a job for them, and they bombed him for Pellegrini, and then they brought him back, didn't they? So, I'm no fans of David. I like Karen. I think she's great at times. But with Sullivan, I have little time for him. But the fact of the matter is that West Ham, are in a difficult position. The fans are completely and utterly disengaged with the ownership. But with respect to the fans, and I'm sure that if recalls come in, they were disengaged with Magnuson. They were disengaged with Terry Brown when he was the owner, because there's a constant thrust of thinking about what fans think that owners should and shouldn't be able to do. And in this instance, given West Ham's decline, they will have a point. They will have a point, because the end result is they're being proved right for the wrong reasons.
03717 2233 44. Give us a call. Tell us what you think. You can text us 81089 as well. West Ham fans, do you trust your owners to pull it out of the fire in the January transfer window? Has Nuno made the desired impact? And are you planning more protests, or are you tired of it all? And do you think that relegation actually is just an inevitability? 03717 2233 44. That's the number to call. You're listening to Matterface and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. West Ham fans, how concerned are you about going down this season? And why aren't the protests quite as vociferous as they were a few months ago? 03717 2233 44. talkSPORT, Sam Matterface with Simon Jordan this morning, and we're here through till 1 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Whatever you're doing today, if you're in your car on your way to family for the Christmas break or your last day at work or whatever, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. 5 points from safety. West Ham fans, what are you thinking about what the future has to offer? There was another big incident over the weekend. I don't know if you saw this, but West Ham fans, especially on social media, not very happy with David Sullivan's fiancée. Ampika Pixon, I don't know who she is, but apparently I'm told she's on the Real Cheshire Housewives programme. I don't know if you've seen that, Simon. Is that something that you've got on Sky Plus or whatever it is?
I had the misfortune, actually, of watching, I think it was something about the Real Housewives of London.
Did you?
Have you seen these horrors that are on this show? These 5 women on there. Oh, my good God.
I haven't seen it.
Any man want to be involved with those ghastly creatures?
Well, David Sullivan is engaged to Ampika Pixon, or I don't know, but apparently
I wonder what she finds attractive about David.
She is on Real Housewives of Cheshire, and she posted a video of herself on social media singing Hey Jude. Was it Hey Jude or Blue Moon? Which one was it? I think it's Blue Moon. Manchester City song. And then captioned it, "You smashed it today, Manchester City," which I don't know, but I'm suggesting if you are engaged to the owner of
Where
West,
did she post this on OnlyFans or something?
I don't know. There you go. It's if you're watching on CTV, it's on Instagram. Look, there you go. You smashed it today, Manchester City. There she is.
She's allowed to support what she wants.
She might be a Manchester City fan for all we know.
Yeah.
But it's not a great look if you're the fiance of the West Ham owner and they've just beaten West Ham 3-0.
No.
Although that does look as if she's posting it before the match rather than after the match. They just look like they're coming out there, to be honest. So it's not like she did it. Unless she posted it straight after the game.
I mean, you have to question her choices on a number of fronts, don't you? But on this one, the judgment call of doing this when you're the fiancé of a beleaguered owner of a football club is probably not the most advisable, is it? So I feel desperately sorry for David in that situation.
We are in our candid era, though, aren't we? Like everyone just says what they want now. Like go on social media and say.
I know, but there's something.
There are limits.
I am very guilty of saying things that I shouldn't say, so I'm probably the last person to say that you shouldn't say certain things. But you can steer a car with your feet if you want to, but it's not an advisable thing to do, is it? It's not advisable to have your fiancé, given the fact that they're playing against the side that you own, and you've got yourself into a situation where you're universally loathed by the football fans, to have your birds put up some tweet about the other club. It's not ideal, is it?
We're laughing about it. It is absolutely ridiculous. But if you're a West Ham fan, you are getting very irate about this. Steve is on the line now. Hi, Steve. You're a West Ham fan. Charming, for all we know.
Well, they'll never see eye to eye, will they?
No, he's so small. He's got. If you look at that list and go through some of those players, Scamacca and Haller for a start, we lost about 40 million on the 2 deals over that lot.
You did.
And he values the club at 800 million, which is fine if we own the London Stadium, but we ain't even got our own stadium.
I mean, I thought it would have been rated a lot more than that if they'd owned the London Stadium. I mean, the real estate alone would be
maybe
huge. But
yeah, sure. But I mean, the real estate isn't the driving factor to some extent. The share of the golden share, the golden share, and the fact you're playing in the Premier League and all the revenues that can attract as a result of it are part and parcel of the real value of a football club. Now, if you look at Palace. I mean, Palace went under Textor's deal, with Textor selling his equity at 180 million quid. Palace was valued at 500 or 600 million quid. And you would argue that West Ham are a bigger club than Palace. I would argue differently because of my bias. So 800. I mean, the big thing is that West Ham fans might be sitting there and thinking to themselves, well, if we get relegated, it's going to force Sullivan to want to sell this football club. It's going to force it into a price where people might be prepared to pay. And it might be that West Ham is the deal that comes into play. Because when I was looking at football clubs earlier on the year about various people that talked to me about wanting to buy a football club without wanting to be a sort of vulture, I've said if West Ham get relegated, there's an opportunity there because that's a football club that could have scale. I mean, look at the fan base. Look at the size of the fan base.
But if David wants to sell the football club, then it's not great for him if they get relegated.
No, not great. But nobody cares about him. I'm talking about the opportunity for people to buy it from him.
But if his overall goal is to sell it, then surely he would be doing everything in his power to try and keep them in the division so that they're a more attractive opposition.
Of course, logic would prevail that ultimately the circumstances in which you get the best outcomes. But how many football clubs are we really, despite all these valuations, how many football clubs do you see get bought at top money? We've seen Chelsea on white because that was ordered. That was a sanctioned, state-ordered purchase.
Manchester United's been the only one, really.
What, for 500 million quid, 700 million quid, with 90% of it loaded in debt?
True.
Right? You know, the rest of them are football clubs. Mike Ashley must be looking at Newcastle being sold for 300 million quid, thinking, well, you know, Wrexham have just done a money valuation, have done an equity deal on a valuation of 500 million in the Championship. So I'm arguing against myself, but the fact of the matter is very few football clubs get bought at top-end money. So the fact if they got relegated, it might have the effect on Davies that I've had enough of this.
Cut the losses.
And I don't want to bankroll this because there's going to be an element of bankrolling in it. I always felt that the Czech billionaire that can't deliver the Royal Mail currently is going to be the guy that ultimately ended up owning the football club, because I thought that was his purpose of buying in at the time. That doesn't seem to have developed anywhere, that relationship.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, I mean, David had the same... Look, whatever I do and don't think of Sullivan, he's a capable operator, no doubt about it. And the same attitude towards him was exhibited at Birmingham. They disliked him intensely. He used to call him Ivor bin Sulking, and put posters of him wanted, because at the time it was Osama bin Laden was the boogeyman of the world, wasn't it? And they were characterising him in that sort of breath. And here we are, 15, 20 years later, with David having the same attitude from a different set of fans, and people just seem to take umbrage with him. Left, right, and centre.
Can we quickly just try and get Lee on, because he's got a quick point about the signings that they need. It's Christmas. We're allowed to go a little bit later. I know Ollie's getting annoyed with me already. Lee, hello.
Hiya, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. What did you want to say quickly?
Yeah, it's like, if you look back to when we sold Rice, that money was squandered. David Moyes wanted McTominay and Palhinha to come in to replace him. He said 2 midfielders need to replace Rice. They weren't Sullivan weren't willing to spend that sort of money. He wanted to go for quantity over quality. So we ended up getting Ward-Prowse, who we don't know, he's missing. I think he's lost on the A406 somewhere.
Yeah, Nuno's not having him.
Yeah, he didn't really live up to it underneath Moyes as well when he was there. Also, it's an Alvarez, which that didn't work. That's not worked out. He's on loan in Fenerbahce. So... and also, we look past David Gold passing away. Even though it's like the GSP and all three of them, he was the wiser one of the three. And as a chairman, he listened to what the managers wanted. Now, it's just Sullivan doing what he wants, really.
Are you worried about, how worried are you about relegation?
Oh, it's happening. We're going down.
And that's the sort of general feeling that I'm getting from a lot of West Ham fans that I talk to, that they've almost just accepted it now.
Yeah, because we need a perfect transfer window. We need a centre forward who can play 90 minutes. We need defenders. We need a midfielder, because Paquetá, as much as I loved him for the first 18 months, is a shadow player. Yeah, it's like playing with 10 players half the time with him on the pitch. And now and again he'll do something great. Otherwise he loses the ball and we end up conceding.
Steve, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hope you have a better Christmas. 0371 722 3344. Next we'll be looking at the news that AC Milan against Como won't now be playing each other in Australia. Like, that was a good idea anyway. Is this it for European games being played abroad? We'll talk about that next.
Sport is often filled with people trying to make a quick buck, often at fans' expenses. But sometimes someone on the fringes comes up with an exhibition idea that goes down a storm. Let me tell you about a couple of them. Mallorca 2007. Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer compete in what was dubbed the Battle of the Surfaces, a unique idea that reportedly almost got cancelled at the last minute when worms got into the grass. An 11th hour turf delivery got the match on, and despite some dodgy bounces on the new green stuff, Rafa and Roger slugged out a 3-set epic. Tennis has a history of exhibitions too, with the Battle of the Sexes in 1973 captivating audiences worldwide as Billie Jean King took on the former world #1 men's player Bobby Riggs, who talked down the women's game. Billie Jean King won. In motorsport, there was Monzanapolis in the 50s when American Indy cars went up against European F1 cars. But perhaps the best exhibitions have been the charity ones. In 1998, legends like Mike Atherton, Sachin Tendulkar and Glenn McGrath turned out at Lord's for a one-dayer in memory of Princess Diana. And since 2006, we've had Soccer Aid, which has raised an incredible amount of money. And if you get to see the likes of Jose Mourinho taking out Ollie Mers, then what's not to like?
This is talkSPORT. It's Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan on till 1 o'clock this afternoon. Looking forward to what's to come, including news today that AC Milan against Como in Australia is off. Shock. The Serie A match in Australia between AC Milan and Como will no longer take place after footballing sanctions imposed by the Asian Football Confederation. According to the league's president, Ezio Simonoli, financial risks and late complications means it was impossible for the match to go ahead. Let's get more details from Italian football correspondent Daniele Fisichella, who joins us on the line now. Good morning to you, Daniele, and greetings of the season to you. Just give us an outline of exactly why this will not be taking place and where it came from in the first place.
There were two sticking points between the Italian FA and the AFC, the Asian Football Confederation, which basically is the UEFA of Asia. And they were the referee, the VAR and the assistant referees that had to be from the AFC, so for the Asian confederations. And initially, the Italian authorities didn't want that. They thought the integrity and the regularity of the Serie A championship could have been a compromise, of course, by not having an Italian referee there. But the Italian authorities, after hearing also the advice of Pierluigi Collina, the former referee who is now on the advisory board for refereeing at FIFA, were convinced that, okay, they could have banned the rules perhaps on the referee. However, yesterday came other requests from the AFC that wanted some financial reassurances in basically in the way the event was promoted, in the way the event was going to be going ahead. We're still looking to understand the details on that. But when the Australian Football Association received those demands from the AFC, obviously they passed it on onto the Western Australian government, where Perth is based, which found them impossible to deal with at such a short notice, and neither did the Italian FA. So in the end, the difficulty was dealing with different governing bodies, footballing governing bodies, and perhaps the case might even end up in court. But yeah, the game in Australia is off.
Shouldn't all of this have been sorted out in the outset before it was all announced?
It should have been, and in fact, as early as last Thursday, Ezio Simonelli, the chairman of Lega Serie A, announced in front of the cameras that the game was going to go ahead. I think the Italian authorities have jumped the gun. I would say they've been over-optimistic, and because such was the desire to take this game, Milan-Como, abroad, that I think the details had not been ironed out. And yes, I think that was a mistake, especially from the Italian FA. On the other hand, the Western Australian government was very keen to have that game there after hosting a couple of friendlies in the summer between Italian teams, but yeah, they put together a press communicate yesterday together when they expressed the disappointments at the decision.
With this and the Villarreal Barcelona game that was supposed to be in Miami being kiboshed as well, I mean, do you see that this is is it just too complicated to take these games overseas? Is this the end of it?
No, I don't think it's too complicated, but I also think there's a lot of resistance from the actual communities in which these countries inhabit. When I was in America and I was talking to the MLS, Charlie Stilintano is one of the leading voices in America for getting a game played in America. He's of Italian descent. He's been involved with relevant sports. They're the ones who pushed back against the objections, the legal requirements that FIFA had, and overcame them, which removed FIFA from the equation in terms of blocking overseas games being played at a domestic level in foreign countries.
He was in charge of the ICC, was it the International Champions Cup, which they play sometimes in America.
But interestingly, talking to the various, I mean, the MLS sort of looked at it and said, well, we don't mind, but US Soccer didn't quite like it. And I think some of these countries, the actual football authorities are not entirely comfortable with teams coming from Europe that are far higher quality than the indigenous teams and playing football in front of fans in America that are used to watching a different level of football. So I think there's a little bit of resistance there. Look, I've never been in favour of... It's a ridiculous argument to suggest that the game is going to be compromised by the refereeing when you've actually compromised the integrity of the game by moving it out of Italy and playing it in Australia in the first place. So that argument seems to me a bit silly. Is this going to happen? I think it's going to happen. How it happens is a curious one for me, because you're seeing Italian teams, I think, playing competitions, cup competitions in Saudi Arabia and playing their finals there. So it's already happening. And the thing for us in the UK is we don't need it to happen right now. La Liga needs it to happen. Serie A needs it to happen. There's an argument to say that Bundesliga needs it to happen, albeit their 50+1 rule changes the configuration of how their football clubs are financed and run, because they cannot bridge the gap with the Premier League. They cannot get anywhere near the Premier League revenues. And that's the big challenge, and that's the reasons why this is manifesting itself. How tangible it is to take teams over to other countries and develop fan bases or globalise on the price to be able to increase your revenue streams, which is the reason behind it, is something that is debatable. But I think it will happen, but I think they're going to have to construct it in a different way than rather than just a domestic game. It might be a game that qualifies you for Europe, or a game that qualifies you for a cup competition or a playoff derivative. But playing a domestic fixture list, you're going to come up against the fans and what they think, and albeit they don't have as much influence as you think they do, they have some influence. You're going to come up against the sporting governing bodies in these countries that are running football, that have a mixed emotion towards it, because if you're going into a country that has lesser football heritage, or soccer if you want to call that in America, they aren't that comfortable with European sides of a higher pedigree coming in and showing the indigenous public what football should look like.
Daniele, last night the Italian Super Cup took place in Saudi Arabia. Napoli won it, and that game as always seems to be played outside of Italy. In fact, for the last 4 years it's been in Saudi Arabia, and if you go over the course of the last 30 years, it's been played everywhere all over the globe. So why would the league not try and play some matches in the Middle East if they want to expand their footprint?
They might try it. I mean, let's remember that the reason why this game between AC Milan and Como was going to be played in Australia is because San Siro, the AC Milan stadium, is going to host the Winter Olympics and the Winter Olympics opening ceremony at the beginning of February, when the game was originally scheduled. Hence the opportunity to try and expand the appeal of Italian football abroad. But going back to the idea of the Super Cup in Saudi Arabia, it's Italian football basically trying to scrape in the barrel, because the Italian FA and the teams involved in the Super Cup receive more or less 20 million euros, which, by the way, is half the amount of money that Barcelona, Real Madrid, and the other teams that play the Spanish Super Cup in Saudi Arabia, in the very same place, are going to receive later on this year. Italian teams are definitely trying to to get some more money there. But the spectacle that was offered yesterday and in the semi-finals the week before was a very poor, half-empty stadium, 17,000 people maximum, no Italian fans, protests from the fans who obviously stayed in Italy, and also some fans in the stadium that we could describe as plastic. There are a couple of viral clips that do the rounds on social media of Inter fans, Arab, Saudi Arabian fans with an Inter shirt that celebrate Inter missing a penalty, and a couple of fans shouting Forza Milan wearing an Inter shirt. So obviously, the appeal of Italian football is quite broad, but I would say probably the marketing and the selling of this hasn't quite worked.
What fascinates me is the sort of desperation that these federations have to try and take games abroad to try and generate more interest. Surely the way to generate more interest is following the sort of the idea of the Bundesliga, where they make everything seemingly available online to everyone, so you can watch the people that play the game in the Bundesliga. So it becomes something that you are almost used to watching and you want to use it. You have to build the brand over a period of time, don't you?
Sure, but I mean, if you look at the Bundesliga, they're giving away their rights for free.
Yeah, because they want people to watch it.
Yeah, but
it's a long-term idea.
That's a wonderful idea, but if you give people something for nothing, they'll value it nothing. So you have to be careful what you give away for nothing. I've always believed that...
So how do you build the brand then?
Well, the challenge is that they have a brand. La Liga has a brand, Serie A has a brand, Bundesliga has a brand.
But it's on the way down rather than up.
It's not on the way down necessarily. It's being completely dwarfed by the Premier League. So the challenge is that the outliers in terms of continued success, and that might not always be the case, because if Comcast keep falling off a cliff with numbers, you might find yourself in the Premier League having a slight challenge about its broadcast revenues. I remember talking to Andrea Agnelli 18 months ago, the former owner of Juventus, who I happen to think is a brilliant thinker, and his viewpoint is that there's a lack of innovation in certain aspects of European football that's created this outcome, and it was really the telcos in the UK and the advanced nature of the telco businesses that really created the outcomes that the Premier League has had. So there's not a desperation. It's called innovation. It's called thinking. They're trying to create outcomes rather than sitting on their hands and complaining about something. They're trying to find different ways in a globalized sport that is a legitimate globalized sport, to find ways to create more revenue, because unless you're going to stop this gravy train of player costs and player salaries, every league is going to have to keep on trying to find ways to innovate and to generate more revenue.
It's short-term gain, isn't it? Taking the games to Saudi Arabia, and as Daniele has pointed out, with not real fans in the stadium and almost plastic fans saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong shirt, cheering the wrong moment, is just a short-term fix.
Do you think it's not plastic throwing German TV rights at Mark Goldbridge or Gary Neville on the overlap? Because you think a few British fans might... I think that's
part of the strategy, actually, to make sure that you drip feed the footage of those big moments in the Bundesliga into a different market, to make it more attractive to people. People have an attachment to that league.
But the innovation, you can argue this point. I had a conversation with some of the guys from the NFL who've taken their product and moved it into the Europe because their marketplace is saturated in North America. So in order to enhance their sport, they're having to package it and take it somewhere else around the world and repositioning it. And no one's accusing people that are watching American football in the UK at Tottenham Hotspur or Wembley Stadium with plastic fans.
But that's different, isn't it? Because there is no NFL football in those markets, whereas there is football
accepted
in the other markets.
But the reasons why you're taking it to Australia and the reasons why you're taking it to America is because the level of football and the level of... I'm very interested to hear from Daniela why Australia... I understand the marketplace of the Winter Olympics, but the Australian marketplace isn't, to my mind, the marketplace that you're going to get huge volumes of growth into. The American marketplace makes all kinds of sense to me because it's such a consumptive society and made up of so many different people, and certainly an Italian representation in America is not insignificant. So I can see why it lands in America and gets commercialised there. I can't quite see the appeal of Australia.
Well, very quickly before we go then, Daniele, just tell us why Australia, if you can.
Because in Perth, there is a huge Italian community and there are lots of people from Italian descent there. And in the summer, Milan had already played a friendly against Roma and there were 56,000 people in the stadium. So there is a growing interest. If you remember, Alessandro Del Piero played even a couple of years in Australia there. So there is a link, there is a connection.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Daniele Fisichella, who is the Italian football correspondent, joining us this morning. And don't forget that for the latest European football news, you can check out Trans-Euro Express. The podcast with Danny Kelly and Andy Brassel is available by the talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcast from. You're listening to Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan. We're on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Next, we'll be talking about Tottenham Hotspur. More boardroom upheaval.
Business briefing on talkSPORT with Tesco Mobile for Business. Got a side hustle? Get business phone bills for up to 40% less than the big mobile networks. For terms and verification, visit tescomobile.com/business.
Turbulent times at Spurs, just days before the transfer window, 14th in the league, and newly reappointed co-sporting director Fabio Paratici is heading to the worst team in Italy. It's believed Spurs have not yet been contacted by the Serie A side, but we understand that it is going to happen. He's going to accept a 5-year deal from Fiorentina, the club who are bottom of Serie A. They stood by Paratici during the embarrassment of a worldwide ban from FIFA for his part in the financial scandal, but it seems that he's fallen out with someone just 2 months after being reappointed. Was it suggest that there is a little bit of chaos behind the scenes at Tottenham?
I don't think that's an unfair observation. I think it's the blind leading the deaf. I think that you've got a new ownership model in there, albeit it was part of the original ownership model. I think whatever people think of Daniel, and I think quite highly of him, I think he was a leader. I think there were definite structures in place under his guidance. I feel a bit sorry for Thomas Frank. I think that Thomas Frank would have been brought in under the auspice of Daniel and Paratici, and they're both no longer going to be there, I suspect. I think Paratici is most likely to go. And then I think you've got a series of number twos. I don't mean number twos in terms of toilet humour. I mean number twos in terms of their ability to run businesses, running the football club, from the guy that Daniel recruited as his number two, who's now running it, to potentially the guy that's going to be the sporting director, who is a number two being recruited. And that's not the way you lead big football clubs. I think you've got a lot of noise from the new owners, or the old owners, that have taken a new position in terms of the funding of the football club, how ambitious they're going to be and how much money they're going to put in. Of course, these would have been the same people that had the intellectual capital to have changed Daniel Levy's direction of travel, because it's their funding that they probably didn't make available that they're now saying they're going to. So it creates, I think, an unstable environment, and I think it's not ideal for Thomas Frank to be in that environment. Not because I think he should be given a pass, because I think that top managers are going to have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. But I don't think it's the environment and the support structure that is ideal for him, and I fear for him in that environment, because I'm not entirely sure that the new thinking is as appropriate for the well-being of Tottenham as people would like to believe it is.
The new thinking, I mean, this is basically the same family that owned the club beforehand, so why have they changed their approach? What is it? What's motivated them to a change?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think
they're trying to sell it.
I think Tottenham's for sale. I think there's no doubt Tottenham's for sale. Despite all the protestations that they're not, I think it's categorically up for sale. Now, of course, there's a balance between saying you're not up for sale and creating more demand for people who might want to purchase it, or creating a situation where people go, what's the point of going to these guys, because they're not for sale, so all we're going to do is be embarrassed. When you've got billionaires that are circling around big football clubs, the last thing they want to be told or embarrassed about is the fact they won't even be entertained an offer on. And that's not how you do business with very high net worth individuals or entities. I think there's a huge fallout that's gone on inside Tottenham, with Daniel's departure, in terms of the reasons why Daniel departed. I think there's a lot of acrimony there. I think some of the nonsense is being put out in the media around, accountancy reviews. I think that's an attack upon Daniel Levy, and perhaps designed to make him perhaps be put in a situation where he sells his shareholding in ENIC at a reduced price.
So you think the Lewis family are trying to undermine him now?
I think by listen, there is a balance between undermining someone or operating with legitimate concerns. I don't think that allowing someone to run a football club for 25 years and when they go out the door suddenly deciding to do a review of the practices they put in place is anything other than undermining. That's my personal view. It's not based upon, inside information. It's based upon my nose telling me that is looking at someone saying you've fallen out. For whatever reason you've fallen out. What's the next best thing? Your business partners. You're still business partners because Daniel's still a significant shareholder in ENIC. Do you want to buy his shareholding in ENIC, and do you want to buy it at the price that suits you? I think that will play out.
They're trying to squash it so that they don't have to pay him as much money.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're trying to undermine him. They're trying to make it difficult for him. They're trying to attack him and question his integrity, damage his reputation, at the same time make him defend his position and have to spend lots of money to do that. That's my reading of the situation. Now, internal to Spurs and what's going on with the team, the basic common denominator is the team on the field. What's happening with the team on the field is that you've changed the management of the football club. You've changed whether people in certain parts of the Tottenham fan base would have changed Daniel Levy for anybody because they didn't like him. Let's see what Tottenham do, because we heard a lot of noise about the finances that they're going to spend. They spent a lot of money in the summer, and they're going to have to keep on spending money because they're not good enough to be competing where Tottenham alleged they need to be, which is inside the top four of the Premier League and competing for honours.
So do you think they'll spend big in January?
I don't know if they've got the bandwidth to do it, if they've got the liquidity to do it inside the club. Who knows? We'll see. But the fact that Levy's gone, I think, has destabilised the club. I think the fact that the sporting director's going as well, and he was supported by Daniel Levy, and the fact that he was brought back, and whether he deserved to be brought back after the situations where he got himself into a situation where he was banned is a different discussion. But he is, in my view, he's going. So the fact he's going is you've got an elite sporting director, whatever way you look at it, and whatever way you look at Levy, you can't say he's an elite chairman for trophies, but he's an elite chairman that ran in terms of the business that Tottenham created and the opportunities that were put in front of managers.
Yeah, but you look at them now, and they are struggling on the pitch. It's not since 1915 that they have won fewer home games in the league than the calendar year of 2025. Yeah. Do you think that all the boardroom shenanigans and all the upheaval behind the scenes has contributed to the team underperforming on the pitch, or is that just a symptom of the fact, was the upheaval in the boardroom down to the fact that the team are underperforming and ENIC finally having enough?
No, I don't think the upheaval in the boardroom is down to the team underperforming. I think that's just a different agenda between very powerful people with a lot of money involved. I think that I don't like to give players and managers an excuse that a boardroom disruption, because quite frankly, they don't really care what's happening in boardrooms. Players don't give a monkeys who runs their football club as long as they're getting paid and the rewards and recognition that they think they're entitled to.
But there's a lack of authority, it feels, there.
That's right. And that's what I think comes from a lack of leadership and a lack of control. And if you put people in charge that are very good administrators but are not leaders, and I don't think the guy that Daniel recruited him to be his number two, to be his chief executive.
Vinay.
Yeah. And I think he's a number two. I don't think he's a charismatic leader. I don't think he inspires great confidence. I think he's a solid, stable administrator. But big football clubs are unique entities. They're run by people. Despite the fact that they've got lots of noise, and despite the fact the media talk about them all day, they are still run by individuals. They're still relatively small businesses. And individuals being taken out change the direction of travel, change the culture inside a football club. Then you take away the support structure the new managers are being recruited under. You take away allies, you take away allegiances, you take away thinking, unified thinking, the reasons for appointments. And then you take away another leg. You knock another leg over, which is a sporting director that will be aligned to the appointment of the manager. Where's the manager? He's not helped in the situation. So all of a sudden, he needs propping up, but he hasn't got the same people propping him up. And maybe the empathy and support this manager might need is not existing in the current structure of Tottenham, and will get worse when this sporting director goes out.
That was a roundup of all the day's top football business stories with Tesco Mobile for Business. We'll be looking ahead to Arsenal against Crystal Palace tonight. Next, it's live on talkSPORT tonight.
Business briefing on talkSPORT with Tesco Mobile for Business. Got a side hustle? Get business phone bills for up to 40% less than the big mobile networks. For terms and verification, visit tescomobile.com/business.
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van range. Scoring a winning hat-trick of performance, payload and price. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van centre.
With your latest sports headlines, I'm Matt Hutchinson. Good morning. Liverpool are only expecting Alexander Isak to be out for a couple of months with a leg fracture he picked up at the weekend. The striker's now had surgery, but Jason Cundy is flabbergasted he wasn't stretchered off at Spurs.
Isak limping off. He was in tears. In tears, you saw him. He knew he'd done something bad. Honestly, I was angry when I was watching it, and I can only imagine how he might feel now. It's their job to care for his well-being, for his fitness and his...
Elsewhere, talkSPORT understands clubs only have the first 10 days of the January window to trigger Antoine Semenyo's release clause of between £60 million and £65 million. We're told several teams are interested. Now, England's Director of Cricket is investigating reports the team's mid-Ashes break in Noosa resembled a stag do with excessive drinking.
We made it pretty clear that that wasn't to be the case, that these lads weren't to be out all the time getting hammered, and so far from what I've seen, that wasn't the case, but that's unacceptable if it was.
Rob Key speaking to our friends at Sky there. Well, after the trip to the beach resort, England lost the third test and the Ashes in Adelaide. Steve Harmison has told talkSPORT players should be allowed time away from cricket within reason.
Sometimes when you get a 4-day break, you should be allowed to look after yourself in that way. I'm not condoning what they've done. If they've been drinking, if they've gone 6-day bender, bang them against the wall and they get what they deserve.
And it's going to be a tough Christmas for Gary Rowett. He's been sacked by Oxford with the club languishing in the Championship relegation zone. The former Birmingham and Millwall boss took over last December.
talkSPORT News.
A man's been remanded into custody after being charged with drugging and raping his ex-wife in Swindon. And there are calls to change the way non-crime hate incidents are recorded. More from the news team at past.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. For a limited time only, get 15% off a set of 4 selected premium tyres. Don't miss out and book today at quickfit.com and drive away happy every time. Conditions apply.
We're expecting a cloudy afternoon for most parts of the UK with light rain for some. Brief brightness is possible though over in the west.
Going to talk Crystal Palace's trip to Arsenal a little bit later on. In the next few minutes, actually, we'll talk about Arsenal and their perspective going into what is an amazing run of 14 games in 38 days. They're in the second of those this evening. Oliver Glasner's not happy about the disrespect shown to the Conference League as well. We'll discuss that with Simon in the next few moments. The third episode of our brand new talkSPORT Daily podcast series is out now as Angelina Kelly, Alex Crook, Rory Jennings and Adrian Durham and Gabby Agbonlahor bring you the 12 hot takes of Christmas. In today's episode, they discuss whether Manchester United fans should take a leaf out of Manchester City fans' book and be more grateful, and if Arsenal would have been better off signing Dominic Calvert-Lewin instead of Victor Gyökeres. The latest... I don't know. I don't know. Well, I tell you what, why don't we tune in to the talkSPORT Daily podcast and find
see how
out.
little we can learn.
By the way, it was Alex Crook advancing the Calvert-Lewin argument, right? Okay, so
very good.
If you want to get involved in that, then he's the target of your ire. So the 12 days of Christmas, the 12 hot takes of Christmas, available on the talkSPORT Daily podcast feed. Would a Carabao Cup triumph even touch the sides for Arsenal fans? Would that be enough to satisfy their thirst for major trophies? Mikel Arteta celebrated his 6th anniversary as the Arsenal boss over the weekend. He's won an FA Cup and 2 Community Shields to show off in his trophy cabinet. Is it unfair and simplistic to say that all they've done over the course of 6 years is just win an FA Cup?
Is it unfair or simplistic? Isn't that the raison d'etre for media observations? To make it simplistic. Yes and no. It is unfair because I think he's recreated a whole feel about Arsenal that wasn't there for some time. There was a managed decline under the last years of Arsene Wenger. There was the missed opportunity of an elite manager in Unai Emery that was not taken because he followed Wenger, and there was just a general ambivalence towards him and a ridicule over the way he spoke the English language and things of that nature, rather than necessarily what he was capable of doing as a football manager. So Arteta has brought back this sort of passionate feel about Arsenal. Their fans are fully engaged. The stadium is an intimidating place to be rather than a library that it had become. They've got a very, very significant squad. He's been backed. The change of ownership from Usmanov being finally prepared to sell his shares and Kroenke taking control of the football club has changed their thinking from being an arm's length American subsidiary. They're now a football club that gets heavily invested in, buys very good players at the top of their game rather than necessarily worries about how much money it's making and competing to stay in the top four. Yet all of that hasn't brought any trophies besides a team that he inherited. So he does have to answer to that. And I think he has to answer that this season. Because I would expect Arsenal to win the league this year. I expected Arsenal to win the league last year. They fell away. And some people would have answered the fact that they've improved in Europe as a reason why they didn't win the Premier League. They've got to be able to compete on both fronts. They've got a good enough squad to do both. I think Arsenal can do both. I think they can win the Premier League and I think they can win the Champions League. And if they don't, I think it can be considered a failure this season.
What, if they don't win both?
No, if they don't win either. Right. If they win both, I think it's a remarkable achievement. But I'm saying that they have the capability of doing that. Okay, there's a small matter of teams like PSG to overcome, but notwithstanding that, you catch people in a cup competition on a bad night, you get an opportunity to do so. So if he doesn't win anything this year, I think that has to be a failure. And if that's a failure, then what does that look like going forward?
Do you think it's interesting because when you said first of all he got an FA Cup with a team that he inherited, and instinctively I would have thought, don't underplay the fact that they've won the FA Cup and that he did that as soon as he came in with a team that he didn't want to play, a style and a manner and an approach that he didn't want to play. They played behind the ball, they counter-attacked, they won both the semi-final and the final on the counter-attack. And he put his hands up and said, I don't want to play like this, but we had to do this to win this trophy. But when you listen to him now, and I spotted this on Friday, and I gave it to our producer today, Ollie, to listen to, he doesn't actually consider it as a major trophy win.
Pretty rapidly maintaining it, something that is very, very difficult, and you need a lot of good people and very aligned people to achieve that. I think we have that in a really strong and solid way, but all the things socially, the transformation has been around the club in terms of the size, in terms of revenues, in terms of the squad that we build, the value of the sporting success that we had, even though we haven't won any major trophy yet, I think it's very, very consistent. So we're in the right place.
We haven't won any major trophies yet. I mean, I wonder if that just sort of tells us how much he values the cup competition and where they are.
He'll take them if he's there.
The Premier League and the Champions League will be all end all.
If they can win cup competitions, then Arsenal will take the opportunity to do so. But their primary focus is to win what they consider to be major competitions. And there's nothing wrong with suggesting that the major competition is the Premier League and the Champions League. I think the Premier League is the competition that managers like to win, because it's like the old Brian Clough mentality, isn't it? Is that you're judged over a course of a season as a manager with all the rigours and vigours of playing what he had to play, which is a 42-game season, what they have to play, which is a 38-game season, and you get all of the attributes of what management really is involved because you have to do it over 9 months against a backdrop of very different difficult teams and managing players, and even more so in this day and age where players are the commodity that you've really got to manage because they think they can do and say as they please. I think there's nothing wrong with him saying Arsenal, what was great about the Arsenal team of the 70s and 80s, that we were a cup team. They were a cup team. And, great, everyone remembers the 1979 FA Cup final where Alan Sunderland scores the winner in the last minute against Man United, but they have bigger fish to fry, and they haven't been given this huge investment to be a cup side and to win cup competitions. They'll take them if they're there. They're lower-hanging fruit. He wants the Premier League. He should be applauded for that outlook. He should be applauded for the attitude of saying that the major competitions are these, because that's what they are.
To me, it comes across as someone who's got drive and ambitions to win the top prizes. And actually, if you
he should have.
Over the course of the last few years, you know that he is only interested in restoring Arsenal to being a complete contender for the Premier League on a season-by-season basis. He feels that's where the club should be, and it should never, ever have standards lower than that.
Nothing wrong with that, is there?
No, absolutely not. But Can a Carabao Cup win help you achieve those aims, though? Because it's like the success fueling success.
Why? How's it helping Newcastle?
Well, I thought it helped Chelsea when Jose Mourinho walked in the door, that they felt like winners after winning the Carabao
in
Cup.
2004?
2005. And City, if you remember a couple of seasons ago, would go on these
Well, it did also
runs.
help that they bought some of the best players in the world.
Well, same with City.
Well, sure.
But it makes those best players in the world feel as if they're part of a winning team.
But with respect, Mourinho was coming in as a Champions League winner. He wasn't coming in to win a league cup.
Chelsea had never won anything before.
Well, they won the FA Cups.
They won the FA Cup, but they'd never won the league since 1955.
No, but they brought in someone to do it.
It changed the attitude.
But the owner changed the attitude. I mean, the likes of the circumstances at Arsenal and Manchester City and Chelsea are different to Arsenal. They are clubs that have been created out of one man's will to desire to give these clubs this blueprint that was there and to supersize it. So Chelsea were doing okay with Ken in charge. They were perhaps heading for some financial difficulties, but they were doing okay. They were respectable as a club. They were stabilising the Premier League and they were winning certain things and giving themselves an opportunity to be competitive. Claudio Ranieri was in situ at the time. Abramovich comes in, bang. The whole dynamics change. They're not just shopping in a certain space now. They're shopping at Harrods dawn till dusk, every hour of the day, buying the best players, and they bring in the best manager in the world. So you expect Arteta wasn't the best manager in the world. Arteta was a fledgling manager learning his trade at Arsenal. Mourinho was already packaged up as a Champions League winner, already thought he was the best thing since sliced bread, and did precisely what he said he was going to do on the can, which was defy the conventional wisdom, tell everyone what he was going to do, and then go and do it. And did the League Cup help it? Yeah, sure. Did it hinder it? No, of course it didn't hinder it. But was it the reason why Chelsea kicked on? Probably not.
Do you think that Mikel Arteta...
Otherwise, your argument would suggest that Arsenal would have kicked on after the FA Cup.
Possibly, yeah. I think the difference is now, though, that they've accumulated a squad that is prepared to win the league, as opposed to when he took over, which was all about just getting over the line.
Oh, of course. And that's why he must be given lots of credit. But he hasn't done that in isolation.
No.
He hasn't done that in a vacuum.
And he's been the driving force behind it.
Well, the driving force behind it has been the preparedness for the board to give him enormous amounts of money to achieve it.
But they've had to trust in his process in order to get there.
Of course, but by the same token, it's like a chicken and egg. You know, he's had to come in the door and been given some degree of support. At the same time, they've continued to support him and raised the bar and kept on spending hundreds of millions of pounds to give him an opportunity. So the question then abounds, at what point do you win something? And what does winning look like for Arsenal? Does winning look like being a competitive side contending, to use your terminology, to win the Premier League, or does it mean winning it?
Well, you said he's got to win something.
I think he's got to win something. I think he's got to win the Premier League. I think there's very little excuse for him not to win the Premier League this year. I don't care about Man City and their engines and their experience and so on and so forth. You're in control of your own mind, your own destiny. Your outcomes are your own. You've been close 2 or 3 times now. This is the time. You've been given all the tools, your centre-forward requirements that people so patently said you needed because you couldn't play the fella that they bought from Chelsea up top. And now you've got a centre-forward in Gyökeres. Everything's in play. Look at the squad they've got.
No,
Look at the squad they've got.
It's the most balanced squad in the league. I think it is.
I think so. Age and experience. Chelsea have got a good squad, but they haven't got enough age in them.
We might continue to discuss this after the break. 14 games in 38 days. I don't know if that's sustainable, especially if you're Oliver Glasner. 29th game of the season tonight for Crystal Palace. They haven't got a big enough squad, despite what you might say about Arsenal. I watched them last Thursday night, and they had to play all the kids. And actually, some of those kids were absolutely brilliant. Maybe we'll see some of those tonight live on talkSPORT. A Finnish side who had won.
You ever heard of them?
The Finnish champions.
Well, you probably have, Stato, but most people hadn't.
But yeah, do you know what? I'd never heard of them until this year.
Oh, okay.
There you go. You're listening to Matterface and Jordan on talkSPORT with Serco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade goes. See, I'm not as sad as you think. Next, we'll be taking a look at the other side involved in tonight's Carabao Cup quarter-final, which is live on talkSPORT. Crystal Palace. It's talkSPORT, Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan, and tonight it's Crystal Palace who go to the Emirates to take on Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. It's their 29th game of the season. And that's more than anybody else in the Premier League has played, by the way, and they don't have the deepest of squads. The boss, Oliver Glasner, is not happy about the English Football League showing a lack of respect towards the Conference League amid his side's fixture congestion. Basically, in November, the EFL was critical of the expansion of European competitions, which it believes implemented without adequate consultation of domestic leagues. This is what Glasner has said.
It's just the only criticism from me to the EFL. I think to fix around when a Conference League is played is just shows also the respect for the Conference League, because they would never fix around when there is a Champions League round or a Europa League round. So I think that's maybe the problem for the game we have to play now on why we have to play in 3 days again. And but yeah, it shows that we are in 4 competitions and we want these games, we want this amount of games, and it's not to complain about it. So I never complain about the amount of games, because otherwise we would train.
That was him talking about the Carabao Cup, which is run by the EFL, being fixed in the same week, the quarterfinals, as the standalone round of the Conference League. Now, the European competitions have expanded. There used to be 6 group game match days during the autumn-winter period leading up to Christmas. There is now 10, because the Champions League has a standalone week, the Europa League has a standalone week, there are more group games, and the Conference League has a standalone week. Yep. So there is a massive expansion. Actually, I don't know where he thinks the Carabao Cup quarter-final is going to go, because there isn't that many free weeks.
Well, exactly. And the fact that the EFL have scant regard for the conference is probably the same regard that Oliver Glasner had until he found out he was being dumped in it after the Europa League qualification was removed, right? So I wonder how much respect he had for it, full stop. Look, the fact is that the English Football League value their cup competition and fight hard to make sure that it has some commercial value to the EFL.
And it should. It's a good competition.
Of course it is. The League Cup was created many years ago in the 60s to give the big clubs an opportunity to have a second bite of the cherry if they got knocked out of the FA Cup. That was his raison d'etre. So there's always been seeded in the mentality that the big clubs somehow get smoke blown up their backsides. But the reality of it is that the big clubs drive the revenues for it anyway. So he can't have too much of an issue, because unfortunately, this is the circumstances. If you want to go campaign everybody, go campaign UEFA for not having standalone weeks for individual tournaments. Then
isn't this just the prize for being successful, though, for Crystal Palace?
Well, it is. It's the overriding challenge that Oliver Glasner has and Palace have with Oliver Glasner, because Oliver Glasner would be happier if he was being supported more and had a bigger squad.
And he said that publicly.
And he has said that, and there's nothing wrong with him saying it. And if Steve Parish manages to get an outcome of keeping Oliver Glasner, it will be a bigger coup than the despicable act he pulled on me when he took the football club off me, in terms of the coup d'etat he did there. If he gets to keep Glasner, that will be a massive achievement. Oliver Glasner is a brilliant manager, and he has, and the disappointing thing for me in this week is that neither of the teams that he put out produced particularly great outcomes in the last week. He put kids out to play against the Finnish side, and okay, they're kids, but they're still Premier League footballers, and they should be able to overcome lesser opposition in the Finnish. Now they've got to play themselves an extra game, because they've now got to play a qualifying, so he can whine about that, can't he? Because he's now got to play a qualifying game to stay in the competition. And then they put a side out against Leeds that hadn't played. They didn't play. They didn't turn up and got battered.
Do you think he got it the wrong way round? Should he have rested players against Leeds United and actually put the better team out in the Conference League so that they avoided those two-legged playoffs?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got fans travelling across the country to watch your team. You put a bunch of kids out against Leeds.
But most of the Palace fans that I spoke to actually were suggesting that would probably be a more advisable thing, because they're not going to win the league.
That's why they're not managers, right? And he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact is that I was surprised that they put out such a reduced team against the Finnish, because they've given themselves another game. They've given themselves another headache. They've given themselves another opportunity to have to stay in a competition by playing. We've given themselves another 2 games, haven't they?
Yeah.
To qualify from the group stages of the Europa Conference League. So that's a challenge that they've created for themselves. Look, he's a good manager. I find myself not wanting to have any tilt at him, because I think they've done brilliantly under him. I think he's put up with... I use the term put up. I think he's endured not being given the support that his deeds deserve.
He's done brilliantly, because he's constructed a system that no matter who plays in it, he can lose Elise, he can lose Eberici Eze, and yet still they perform at this unbelievable
he's got players playing at full
level.
Tilt. Mateta's never had such a rich vein of form as the form that he's in, albeit he's slightly devoid of goals in recent games. Look, as I say, Glasner is the big thing for Palace is finding a way to keep him. I don't think they will. I never thought they would.
But that is the issue, isn't it? It's about what happens next, because when you are so successful and you've done a good job, so Glasner's done a great job, everyone's talking about the possibility of him moving on. If you are successful as a player, Mateta, Gay, all the talk is about them moving on.
What happens? It depends who they go to, doesn't it? It depends who they go to.
Where does that leave Crystal Palace? And does it show actually that Crystal Palace are, as John Textor said on this programme when he came in to see us, just happy to survive, that they're not going to invest in Glasner?
Yeah, but John's got agendas to serve in that conversation, because he's making an observation about Parish's ownership model and it's not Parish's money. Parish hasn't got the money to advance Crystal Palace. It's the people behind Parish that he brought in, which is Harris and Blitzer, that have got plenty of money.
Woody Johnson.
And Woody Johnson. Now, whether their money's being redirected into building a new stand, who knows? That's part of the argument. They're constructing a huge amount of money is going to be spent on that. And if you look at football clubs like Arsenal that built a stadium and then decided to not invest in their team for 10 years, the argument's been made by bigger clubs with bigger achievements. The difficulty is that Palace have opened a door of expectation by winning the FA Cup. They've opened a door of enlightenment where you can look through it and think, actually, we can go really high in this league. We can do really well. But the cost against reward is the balance that Palace have to strike. Are we going to get £100 million worth of more revenue and £100 million worth of more opportunity if we spend £100 million on players? Fans will say spend £100 million because we'll be 5 places up the league. But does that equate to the commercial returns? You have to get balance. As much as people don't want to hear it, the cost implications of football, its refusal to deal with player wages, its refusal to deal with squad capping, or its refusal to tackle the transfer market means that this runaway train of finances mean that you have to balance things properly. And even if you're an owner and you've got the wherewithal, PSR stops you. But in Palace's situation, it doesn't stop them. Because PSR doesn't stop Palace, because they're not in a position where they're being compromised by PSR, and they have very wealthy owners. So they do have to look within and decide how ambitious they are for Crystal Palace and how much they want to push it. And it would seem not very far. And that's the reasons why they will probably lose Glasner. They were brilliant to get him in the first place. Let's not lose sight of the fact that who got him? Palace got him. So you have to give an enormous amount of kudos to them. But the challenge is that the question you ask, when a good manager does well at a club like Palace or a player does well, they go somewhere else. The players that are going somewhere else are going to Arsenal, they're going to Bayern Munich, the same thing at Bournemouth. Their players are going to Real Madrid and Liverpool.
Because they understand their place in the food chain. And whilst they're going on this journey to move up the league.
If Palace players go to Brentford, and Fulham, there's a different matter.
But you've still got to replenish it. You've still got to bring other people in.
That's called good recruitment. It's called being diligent at what you do.
And are they doing enough of that?
Well, I don't know. They lost Dougie Freedman. And I think Dougie Freedman was a huge part of the intellectual capital.
There's a lot of disruption behind the scenes in the boardroom over the course of the summer. I think they lost the CFO as well, didn't they, as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much the chief financial officer makes a difference to
but just it felt like there was a lot of change in that area of the business in the summer.
Well, there was a lot of mistakes made. The reasons why they're not in the Europa League is because their chairman made a mistake. He's made done lots of things brilliantly, Parish, no doubt about it, irrespective of what I think of him. Palace have been in the best position in the history of this football club. My ownership, Ron Nodes' ownership, Ray Bloy's ownership, Parish and his little consortium that took the football club and put it onto a new level. They won FA Cups, they've gone into Europe, fabulous. But the problem with football is it's never enough. It's an ever-increasing or ever-decreasing circle. Look at Wolves. Wolves, once upon a time, their ownership model was lauded and applauded for dragging them out of the backwaters of the Championship and putting them into the Premier League and giving it a real go. Now, they hate them. They can't wait to get them out the door. People have very short memories.
Okay, you're listening to Matterface and Jordan on talkSPORT with Serco Builders Warehouse. We've got live commentary of that game tonight. Adrian Durham will be there alongside Jim Proudfoot and Scott Minto will be on the show tomorrow. Next, we'll be getting the latest odds from BetMGM.
When Sir Jim Ratcliffe took control of footballing operations at United, the Manchester-born billionaire was somewhat welcomed in as a homegrown hero, ready to save the club from the dark days of the Glazers. But in just 12 months, he became a punch bag for many fans. So what happened? Let's take a look and you can decide for yourself. The important context here is that over the last 3 years, the club has lost over 300 million quid. And from day dot, Ratcliffe committed to fixing this, which of course is the right thing for the club. But what seemed to get fans' backs up is the way Sir Jim Ratcliffe, accompanied by Sir Dave Brailsford, went about it. For example, talkSPORT understands their lunch options at the Carrington canteen have been reduced to just soup and sandwiches, which the higher-ups at the club say will save them £1 million a year. Now that might make sense for many who don't get free meals at work themselves, but it gets a little bit more picky than that. It was reported that after staff brought some stationery, they were ordered to send sellotape back because it wasn't considered essential. The reward for being Steward of the Week used to be 50 quid, but that was scrapped and replaced by a paper certificate. And such is the grip Ratcliffe has on spending, he reportedly scrapped company credit cards, meaning some staff racking up hundreds of pounds worth of expenses and spending weeks out of pocket waiting to be reimbursed. But it's not just the stingy decisions around the amount in 2025. Now, while there are people who acknowledge that United's staff numbers are overinflated, it's the optics which aren't great. Because while all this has been going on, Casemiro's getting paid 350 grand a week, and the club forked out 14 million quid getting rid of Eric Ten Hag and Dan Ashworth. But United fans' rage doesn't just stop here at the cuts. Ratcliffe's unpopular decision to introduce a flat ticket price of 66 quid for every fan, even children, certainly did not go down well. For fans, it feels like the very foundation of the club's support is being attacked for the sake of making marginal financial gains. But Ratcliffe has backed it, saying if you shy away from difficult decisions, then nothing is going to change. And time will tell whether these measures will improve operations at the club and help drag standards up on the pitch. But one thing's for sure, his first year wasn't exactly a charm offensive, and there's still a long way to go for United to be back to where many say they belong.
talkSPORT. It is Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. It is, isn't it? Yes. Time now to catch up with the latest odds, all thanks to BetMGM.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18+gambleaware.org.
Right, let's speak to Matt Gibson from BetMGM to look at today's top sporting events and discuss the latest odds. Hello, Matt. Merry Christmas to you. Arsenal against Crystal Palace tonight in the Carabao Cup. What are the odds suggesting? I reckon they're suggesting it's going to be a home victory.
Yeah, morning, lads. Sam, we might make a bookie out of you yet, mate. 12-25 Arsenal are to win the game. Palace big outsides at 23-4, but I think if you look at the top line numbers, fellas, you see why Arsenal are big favs on this. They've lost 2 out of 25 in all comps so far this season. Beaten Palace this season 1-0, unbeaten in 8 against Palace. But we were just talking this morning, the lads in the office. They've lost to Liverpool and Villa. They didn't beat City and Chelsea. It took 2 own goals from Wolves and a penalty against Everton in the last 2. I wonder, gents, Palace need a reaction after a disappointing night against the Finnish lot in the Europa Conference and getting done at Leeds. I wonder, fellas, Palace to go through at 9-4. Are you having any of that for a bit of reaction from Glasner's side?
I'm not of the narrative that I think it was a disappointing night against the Finnish lot, by the way. I thought there were so many positives from that actually, yeah, okay, so they didn't get the desired result, but the more disappointing results were earlier in the competition. They put themselves into a bad position.
That's right.
But I do think that the performance on Saturday was a bit of a surprise. They got undone by 4 set pieces. And yeah, they definitely do need to improve, I think. Can they do it against Arsenal, do you think?
No.
There you go.
Not at all. No optimism. No optimism from.
No, it's not a case of. I mean, I can have confected optimism for the purpose of a little soliloquy, or I can have a bit of reality. I think Arsenal.
Do you think Arsenal rotate, Simon? Do you think they'll
I think they'll both rotate.
Really?
And I think Arsenal's rotation will be better than Palace's because Arsenal got better.
You don't think Palace have a tilt at this? No.
They may well do, but I still think that Arsenal with a rotation at the Emirates in a quarter-final of the Cup will just have a little bit too much of Palace. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I will be, but if Palace go and get a result there, it'll be a great result. And I think Arsenal won't want to be beaten at home, as stating the bleeding obvious. And I think they'll put enough of a side out to be able to deal with whatever Palace bring.
I'm doing the game tonight, actually, and I was preparing for it yesterday evening, and I was going through the Crystal Palace, the Arsenal team that played at the weekend, because we did the Arsenal-Everton game. And, you know, he didn't make many substitutions in the match at Mikel Arteta, and he waited till really late on. And I just think that he had the idea of making a lot of changes in mind. But when you think Arsenal making a lot of changes, I mean, they're likely to bring in Martinelli on one side and Madueke on the other side. If they replace Gyökeres, they'll replace him maybe with Merino or maybe with Gabriel Jesus in his first start since coming back from injury. It's not a bad front three to come into this game. And if you think that Gabriel Jesus was the star of the show the last time these two met in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, then that is ominous for Crystal Palace, who do look a little bit leggy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Palace are without Munoz and Sarr, so potentially those changes down Arsenal's left could be key. Listen, we've got them as big favourites, but if I was a Palace fan, having sort of followed them, having a look at them the last two games, I would certainly want a performance, maybe not a result, but definitely a big performance at Arsenal tonight.
Yeah, also the other thing is that they have done damage against big teams in cup competitions. We go back to the Manchester City FA Cup final, but Liverpool in the previous round as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they're capable of putting on a good performance. I just don't think they're capable. I don't think they'll win this game. I hope that they do, but I don't think the Palace will turn up and be as bad as they were against Leeds, because I don't want to take anything away from Leeds, because I think Leeds thoroughly deserve to win the game, and I'm really pleased that they're getting themselves together. But they were bloody helped a lot by Palace, and I don't think you'll see that version of Palace against Arsenal tonight, because it's a cup competition, it's a London derby, there's an air of expectation about it, but I still think Arsenal will have too much.
There's been a lot of talk about the Premier League at Christmas, Arsenal top of it. There's no Boxing Day games apart from the one which is live on talkSPORT, but what about the Championship, because that takes centre stage during the day on Boxing Day?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the early kick-off derby, Birmingham, isn't it? But I just want to have a look at the outrights and like the top six. Obviously, we know Frank's doing an incredible job at Coventry. I thought Coventry would be bang up there last year. There was the madness game at Sunderland, wasn't there, that saw Sunderland go through to the playoff final. But Coventry were probably the better side over the two legs last year, so no surprise for them to be top of the tree. Middlesbrough have been thereabouts each year, or last few years, and you expect Ipswich as a relegated side with a very good manager who now isn't going anywhere. You expect them to be up there as well. But I think the outliers, fellas, I think are Hull and Preston, right? Hull and Preston finished 20th and 21st, I think, last year. Both new managers-ish. I think Hecky came in the Paul Heckingbottom came in the summer. Ruben Sellers obviously left for Sheffield United. Hull have got a new manager in. I think those guys are punching well above the weight. I wonder, fellas, I don't know how much you've seen in the Championship. I wonder if you think Hull, Preston, Millwall, have they got the staying power to stay in this top six, or do you think the likes of Leicester, who are in 13th, Southampton, who are in 11th, Sheffield United, who are in 18th, who are quickening a bit, do you think they'll rise to the top, or do you think there is a chance for a side that was really looking over the shoulder last year, like Hull and Preston, to be in the shape?
It's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, I'm quite close to Hull. I know the owner quite well. So I was surprised to see them in the conundrum that they had last year. Not surprised to see them back in the groove. A tune was on last week with myself and Jim. So he has a very significant thought process about their opportunity. I'm not surprised to see Ipswich there. I'm not delighted to see that scabby mob from South London, Millwall, there, and hopefully they'll fall away. But I look at it. I think Sheffield United will come. As much as it looks like a very unrealistic situation, they're in rich vein of form. It's been done before. It was done by my Palace team in 2003. It was done by Roy Keane's Sunderland side, coming out of the bottom three after a dreadful start to a season, and then just going on a period of ascendancy. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see Sheffield United there. I'm surprised to see Preston there, but I've always fancied Ipswich. I thought Coventry were getting reeled a little bit back in again, and now they've got a 6-point gap again from Middlesbrough. That's because Middlesbrough's results have concurred with Coventry still managing to get points out of games. But it's closing up a little bit, and Ipswich, for me, are the side that I think might disrupt the top two.
We agree with you, Simon. Actually, from a bookmaking point of view, we've got Ipswich as 6-4 for top two, Borough 7-4 for top two. So we think those two will flip. And I know I've been talking to you about the Sheffield United top six price for the last few weeks with regards to Chris Wilder coming in. They're right into 7-2 for the top six. So we do think Sheffield United are coming with a wet sail, and it's probably looking at Hull, Preston, Millwall. One of those guys will miss out.
Yeah, I wonder what about Southampton as well, who are on the rise under their new manager. They've picked up in terms of form after a sticky start to the season. They're not too far away from the top 6 now. They're only 4 points behind. And actually, they've got a squad that should be troubling the top 6, that is for sure. Today's the last day of the PDC World Darts Championship before it breaks for Christmas. What do we have in store?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few big names go out so far. Gerwyn Price, Chris Dobey, Ryan Searle, James Wade went out in an absolute thriller yesterday against Rapid Ricky Evans. Michael Smith, former world champion, also back at home. Just having a look at today, fellas. There is an afternoon session. I'm not necessarily interested in the afternoon session from a betting point of view, but there's a few favourites and big names in action tonight. Danny Noppert plays Justin Hood, Gary Anderson plays Connor Scott, MVG is in action against William O'Connor, and Josh Rock plays Joe Comito. Now, those 4 favourites are really, really short odds on, 33-20 for the fourfold there, but I'm not going to come on in here and tell people to back 33-20 on Christmas Eve. I think, fellas, if you take those 4 favourites, Noppert, Anderson, Van Gerwen and Rock, and you back them to be king of the hockey, so match winner, most 180s, highest checkout, if you wrap those up in a fourfold, might just be a Christmas miracle at 55-1. I know that seems a big price, Sam, but the last time I come on here, I tipped up a king of the hockey hacker and it came in. So maybe just a couple of quid will help the Christmas fund for the list.
Listen, you've got form. We'll follow you. No problem. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt. Appreciate that. That was a look at the latest odds, all thanks to BetMGM. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app today. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
And next, we'll be taking a look at Rasmus Højlund's comments that he made a great decision to swap Manchester United for Napoli. That's next. to talkSPORT and that festive 50. That festive 50. I'm indulging in a bit too much festive activity. Continues tonight. Arsenal against Crystal Palace, and then we're back on Boxing Day with a live game. It's Manchester United against Newcastle. There's only one live Premier League game on Boxing Day, and we've got it here for you on talkSPORT. Let's pick out who's been the real deal this week with the Selco's Builders Warehouse.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
The in-demand Antoine Semenyo. It's been reported that the Bournemouth talisman is ready to make a decision on his future. According to reports, he's got interest from Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, and wants to resolve his future quickly. I'd understand that Liverpool aren't as interested as the other two at this stage, because in January they're prioritising other areas of their team. Manchester City and Manchester United, I think, are the main contenders. If you had the same reported options as Semenyo, which team would you join?
Manchester City, probably.
Despite the fact that there are a lot of other players that would be competing for your place, but Manchester United, you're more likely to be a main character.
Very much, but you believe in yourself, don't you? Top players believe in themselves, and they believe they're going to displace other players. If you're not a top player, you worry about those sort of things.
What do you think Bournemouth will happen to Bournemouth if they end up selling him, because they've had a bit of a bad run?
Well, I mean, I think the manager at Bournemouth is a very good manager. I still think they're competitive in games. I think they've started to get themselves together. They got the draw the other day, didn't they? And they're now getting back to where they were before. I think he's had to absorb a lot of good players leaving and a lot of balance being lost, and he seems to have done it relatively seamlessly at the beginning of the season, and now he's getting caught up with it a little bit.
But they've only won 5 games all season.
I know.
And, they either do this sort of unbelievable streak of great results or an unbelievable streak of bad results, usually coinciding when people start talking about them or their players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just coincidence. I mean, I've always liked Semenyo. I liked him when I first saw him a couple of years ago. I remember because obviously Graham Souness lives down in that neck of the woods and watches him quite a lot. And I was raving about him to Souness, and Souness said, you're singing to the choir. He's a good player. There was a criticism that he comes in and out of games at times, but I think that's an unfair criticism. I think he's a very good player, and I think he's a very... he's an exciting player. Now, whether these players translate, we've seen Kirkis struggle to translate from the form that he exhibited at Bournemouth to the form that he's shown at Liverpool. And it's one thing playing for Bournemouth, it's another thing playing for one of the bigger clubs where the expectation is instantaneous. There's no latitude. I mean, one of the players that has translated very well from a slightly smaller club is my club's Eberechi Eze. He's landed straight in Arsenal, but he was for me, he was a big game player anyway. So my view is if I were in his camp, of course there's a whole raft of different things. I don't know who his ghastly agent is and what they're asking from the equation and what the financial side of things will be between the clubs. I mean, if there's
a release clause that for the first 10 days of the January transfer window, someone can activate for 65.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what other caveats are attached to that, whether it's based upon a certain club being in the top 6, have to do certain payment terms that are all triggered by different liabilities inside the release clause. But my view is that if you get an opportunity, the interesting thing is with Guardiola at Manchester City, because there's a lot of people, or the bookies are increasing their idea that this is going to be Guardiola's last season. I'm interested to see if that would be the case and would that influence a player's thinking, because if you're joining Man City, it's because you want to play for Pep Guardiola. If Pep Guardiola is not going to be there in 6 months' time, that will influence your thinking, but nothing's going to change Manchester City. They're going to keep on powering forward. Whether Pep Guardiola stays there or not, they're going to keep on wanting to evolve as a football club. And I'd be curious to see if Guardiola is actually going to leave, because if they don't win the Premier League this year, it doesn't feel to me that the Guardiola that we know will want to go without having something to leave behind, which is, i.e., I leave when I'm on top, not when I'm trying to rebuild.
Rasmus Højlund stepped out of the limelight of Manchester United and into the spotlight of Napoli, and he seems to be pretty happy with his decision after lifting the Supercoppa trophy yesterday in Saudi Arabia and scoring in the semi-final of that competition the week before. He said, "What a great decision this looks like." And does Højlund's success reflect sort of worse on the player or on Manchester United, do you think? I mean, I
think he was useless at Man United, wasn't he? I mean, he scored some more goals at Napoli. It would have been difficult for him to score less than he's been scoring in recent times. I thought he looked completely outsorted as a player. He looked a mile off. And playing in Italian football...
Was that the environment, though? Or was it his mentality?
I think it's probably a bit of both. But if your mentality is right, you'll be able to overcome certain aspects of the environment. Nobody, in a perfect world, everyone can exist in a wonderful way. Everyone can excel. It's those that can excel when it's not perfect that are the real players, in my view. And going to Napoli, with respect to Napoli and what they've achieved and who's managing them, at times I found his behaviour at Tottenham appalling, but notwithstanding that, he's a good manager. But the Italian league is not the Premier League.
It's not, but it's quite odd, isn't it, that Manchester United players seem to depart and then perform better. We look at Rashford at Barcelona. We look at McTominay and Højlund.
Come on, Rashford slung in a few crosses and scored a couple of goals. He's hardly set the world on fire. Every time Rashford puts a cross and everyone goes, "Well, Rashford's flying at Barcelona." I mean, the kid can cross the ball. I mean, that's not a world-class attribute to cross the ball, is it? Every now and again. And McTominay and
MVP in the Italian league last year, McTominay.
But yeah, great, fantastic. But again, it's about the league that you're playing in. He's done wonderfully well. He's a decent player, Scott McTominay, and there's a question about why Man United couldn't have utilised him. There was a point where Scott McTominay was potentially going to go to West Ham. That was a legitimate transaction. Well, that's not a player in an upward trajectory, is it? And the Italian league has lost its flavour. It's lost its resonance. Their teams don't dominate in Europe anymore. They're not the poster boys of European football. They're not the teams that and the interest that had when Paul Gascoigne went to Lazio in the early 90s. So there's a reason why some of our British players go over there and excel, because it's an easier league to excel in.
It's interesting, though, that Højlund decided to go on social media and have his say and be so candid about the fact that he was happy to be at Napoli now instead of Manchester United. We are seeing more people use social media to speak out more than ever before. We are seeing managers, players say what they like in press conferences.
Well, managers don't use social media, do they?
No, they don't use social media, but Enzo Maresca walks into a press conference for absolutely no reason, talks about a bad 48 hours.
Because
managers do it. They are talking more candidly. Players are talking more candidly. We had Mickey van der Ven go on the overlap.
They're not really. They're complaining. They're complaining. Players have always complained, and managers have always complained. It's the mediums which they're complaining through, and the fact that we built this situation where we spend our entire time lionising people that don't often deserve to be lionised in the media. Fans spend a lot of their time giving them a latitude and giving special dispensation. In no other business could an employee walk out and say the things that Maresco said about his employers. In any other business, in any other walk of life, they'd be booted out the door, and rightly so. In football, they're given latitude because they're entitled to have that view. And the thing is that we're creating this sense of entitlement. It was a fascinating conversation yesterday with Martin O'Neill about Amarim's comments about the players and their mentality of entitlement. But it pervades the industry. It's immune from criticism. It's rewarded for mediocrity at times.
He talks out a lot, Amarim.
He does. But I don't think he talks out about the people that he works for. I think he talks about the fact that he lets them down.
He talks about his players and he talks about the situation that Manchester United are in. He's quite candid.
But that's because people like us perpetuate this crap that you can't. People like us, or people like certain I don't do it.
We want them to speak out. We want them to tell us the truth.
Oh yeah, but there's sections of the media that turn around and go, cooking your players in public. That's not the way to go. That's entirely pop. All these people that write, you can go across the pantheon of media and say, if a manager talks about his players, he's throwing them under the bus. He's doing this. He's doing the other. He's doing the other thing.
I think
none of these people have ever managed football clubs or actually managed anybody.
I think we're much happier when they're talking out than when they're not.
Oh no.
But the media trained nonsense that they come out with.
You're much happier when you've got Mo Salah saying what he's saying, because it writes the stuff for journalists. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to concoct some loose understanding of how things really work in the real world.
We want to know how people feel.
I feel wonderful. Don't want that. I feel wonderful. No one's interested in that. If someone tells you how wonderful they feel and how much they love their manager and how much they love their club and how much they love their teammates, that's not going to really make the news. What's going to make the news and what get every newsroom and sports journalist excited is when someone comes out and says the load of old tripe that Mo Salah said the other day, because the journalists were positively frothing at the mouth when they see Salah going, and I've had this and I've had that. If Salah was coming out saying, I'm as happy as could be, that journalistic little cabal would have dissipated in about 7 seconds. So
I don't know. Actually, he doesn't speak that often.
Well, sure, but it wouldn't have been interesting to hear him to say, "I'm happy. I'm really happy." No one would have wanted to hear that, and that's a reflection on media. Full stop. But the fact of the matter is that there's an entitlement that's created in this industry, and if you've ever worked in it, it'll irritate you. If you ever owned a football club, it'll irritate you, because some of these little islands where people like the fellow at Chelsea, Maresca, can come out and say what he says, and then cowardly backs away from it because he's been smacked. And he's been smacked because he said something stupid. And if you're going to say something, say it, rather than leave these little cliffhanger moments of mystery about who he could possibly be referring to.
That was the pick of our Real Deals this week. It was Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's Real Deals at selcobw.com.
Next, we'll be taking a look at the confirmation that Alexander Isak is going to be out for a very long time after fracturing his leg. His manager, Arne Slot, has been speaking this morning. He is not happy with the challenge which led to the injury. Has he got a point?
talkSPORT Sports Update, powered by the Nissan Van range, supporting van owners to get the job done. Search Nissan Vans or head to your local Nissan Van centre.
With your latest sports headlines, I'm Matt Hutchinson. Good afternoon. Alexander Isak's leg break is not as bad as first feared. Arne Slot expects his record signing to only be out for a couple of months. But the Liverpool boss isn't happy with what caused the injury.
This was, for me, a reckless challenge. The tackle of Van der Ven. If you make that tackle 10 times, I think 10 times, there's a serious chance that the player gets a serious injury.
Elsewhere this Tuesday lunchtime, talkSPORT understands clubs only have the first 10 days of the January window to trigger Antoine Semenyo's release clause. That's between £60 million and £65 million. We're told several teams are interested in the Bournemouth man. Newcastle have asked for clarification from the referee's body on the decision not to give them a penalty against Chelsea at the weekend. Anthony Gordon went down under a challenge from Trevor Chalobah in a 2-2 draw at St James's Park.
One of the arts of defending is not to put yourself in that position. I thought, and I still do, it was a clear penalty. Having reviewed it, I've not changed my mind. But it wasn't given, and my time is best spent moving forward rather than backward.
On to cricket now, and a mid-Ashes holiday enjoyed by England's players down under is going to be investigated by the ECB. Some players reportedly drank excessively over 4 days in Noosa and a couple of days in Brisbane beforehand. Following that break, England lost the third test in Adelaide and the Ashes, but Steve Harmison has told talkSPORT it's not a black and white situation.
If they've gone 60 bender, bang them against the wall and they get what they deserve. But if they've been caught having a couple of pints in the middle of the afternoon, when the world is ending, I'm not hammering them for this.
And Oxford have sacked Gary Rowett with the club struggling in the Championship relegation zone.
talkSPORT News.
Some breaking news. The government has announced a U-turn on the farming inheritance tax. Elsewhere, Greta Thunberg has been arrested in London and a man's been remanded into custody, charged with drugging and raping his ex-wife in Swindon. More from the news team on all that at past.
talkSPORT weather with QuickFit. With over 600 centres across the UK, most of which open 7 days a week, we're always there when you need us. QuickFit. Drive away happy every time.
We're expecting a cloudy afternoon for most parts of the UK, with light rain for some. Brief brightness is possible, though, over in the west.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan, and we're live on talkSPORT. Remember tonight, Arsenal against Crystal Palace. Boxing Day looks like this. We've got loads of action from the Championship starting at midday, right the way through till the afternoon, and then in the evening, 8 o'clock, Manchester United take on Newcastle in the only Premier League game, and it's live on talkSPORT. Saturday 27th, we've got Nottingham Forest in action, and then on the 30th of December, the night before New Year's Eve, Arsenal against Aston Villa. Games don't get much bigger than that. Well, maybe a week later when Arsenal take on Liverpool. That's also live on talkSPORT. So the best of the football over the Christmas and festive period is certainly right here on this station. Alexander Isak has sustained a fracture on his left leg and he's undergone surgery. Liverpool have confirmed that. They're yet to outline a timescale on the recovery, but it is going to be a significant period, probably a few months. Liverpool said he had successfully underwent surgery on his ankle that included a fibular fracture. The forward, who signed for a record £125 million in the summer, has scored 3 in 16 for Liverpool since his move. And speaking this morning, Arne Slot discussed Mickey van der Ven's challenge, which led to the injury.
The most injuries we have are not related to overloading. So if you look at Alex's injury, that has nothing to do with overloading a player. This was, for me, a reckless challenge. So I think I've said a lot about the tackle of Xavi Simons, which for me was completely unintentional. I don't think you will ever get an injury out of a tackle like that, the tackle of Van der Ven. If you make that tackle 10 times, I think 10 times there's a serious chance that a player gets a serious injury.
He's not happy about that challenge. Has he got a point?
I didn't think so. I mean, yesterday we were discussing it with Martin O'Neill about the ideal of it maybe being retrospectively evaluated and some consequences reaped on him. I think he went for the ball, tried to block, and I think it was an unfortunate collision. I mean, I made some observations yesterday which might have been a little bit clumsy about the fact that Isak's current ill form is a little bit of calm. I certainly wasn't wishing him a broken leg, as some of these irate Liverpool fans seem to be posting on social media, getting all up in their arms. This is a fan base that regularly sings Munich songs to Man United or awful songs to Leeds United about Turkey, and getting all offended because they think I wished karma upon Alexander Isak, which I most certainly did not in terms of breaking his leg. I didn't like his behaviour in the summer, and I didn't like the fact that he got rewarded for that behaviour, but that's a different discussion entirely to wishing him to have a broken leg. Look, I mean, these managers, I think the challenge that Simons did on Virgil van Dijk was a poor challenge, a really poor challenge. And somehow that gets sort of excused away because it won't cause an injury. Listen, he will know more than I do about what causes injuries or not, because he's in the business of being a football manager and a previous player.
He doesn't get the ball, and it's after the ball has gone that he makes contact with Alexander Isak. Yeah. He doesn't get punished for it.
That's momentum, isn't it?
If the goal doesn't get scored, that's a penalty.
Correct. Yeah.
So should they have taken action anyway, despite the fact the goal's gone in? Should he not have been yellow carded for that?
Possibly. But I mean, to look at obviously the outcome is that a player's gotten injured, and that's disappointing for Liverpool, disappointing for the player. And he's gotten injured in a moment where I don't think there was any malevolence in Van der Ven's challenge. I think it was a legitimate attempt to try and block an outcome, and whether it was irresponsible, I'm not sure that's right too. I just think it's a challenge that's created a poor outcome, for the player and for Liverpool.
I think there's some poor decision making though with Spurs and their defenders at this moment in time. They get a little bit amped up, a little bit aggressive. Van der Ven obviously doesn't look as if he's in the best.
But Romero does that for a living.
Romero does.
But he does that for a living.
Bentancur did that towards the end of the game.
Yeah.
Simons with that challenge, as you've already mentioned. You know, go back to I was at the Slavia Prague game the other week, and it's a chaotic football match. They just don't look completely in control of their emotions, Tottenham Hotspur.
No, I mean, especially at home, I think they're frustrated in the outcomes that they're getting, and also the reaction from the fans. And you're seeing the players talk to the media and seeing Pedro Porro wagging his finger at fans, telling them how they will and won't behave and how they will and won't tolerate it, which was absolute nonsense. Do your talking on the field. And I think Romero lives on that edge, doesn't he? I mean, I think he's a great central defender, but I think he lives on the edge of temperament, ridiculous decisions.
Do you think he's a great central defender? Because Stuart has got this view that actually he is not the greatest central defender in the world, and he lets his teammates down far too often.
I think that's true. I think technically and ability-wise, I think he has the ability to be a significant centre-half. I think there was times a couple of years ago when he was getting far too big for his boots and didn't fancy it and felt the Spurs was beneath him. And then somehow Ange got him back into groove and he was a real addition to the team. This indiscipline will go to Stuart's argument. I'm not going to argue with Piercy about what makes a good defender because he'll beat me all day on that argument. But I do think he has the capability. But the temperament side of things, I think absolutely right. And if the temperament side of things cannot be controlled, and it's a fundamental part of what his game is, then he's always going to put Spurs in jeopardy. And I did think that the centre-back at Liverpool made a little bit of a mess, a bit of forward play about the lash out.
Can I say?
Yeah, I mean, he's a big boy, he puts it about.
It was when he was thought about going to hold his face and then decided to hold his chest because he realised.
Exactly, but Romero put himself in the way of that. I mean, Van der Ven...
That was all of his own making.
Of course it was.
Because he got yellow carded for mouthing off after the goal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. And there's no excuse for that. And now he puts his team in jeopardy and ultimately gave them a little opportunity to get back in the game once they've gone down to 9 men. That's the difficulty they experienced. But to go to Mickey van der Ven, I think there's questions about his defensive capability. I think he's a wonderful athlete. I think offensively going forward, I think he is a revelation. But at times, I think his decision-making needs to be looked at. But that's about having a good partnership. If you look at the best partnerships in the Premier League and in leagues gone before that, and soon as we'll trot out the 1970s and 80s, talking about Hansen and Lawrenson, and we'll talk about centre-backs at Man United and the partnerships they had, and Bruce and Pallister and Vidic and Ferdinand, whoever else we want to talk about. But they were a partnership. And if you've got one partner that is heated and often prone to and susceptible to being overwrought by emotions and losing his control, it doesn't help his other central defensive partner, who probably needs a little bit of steer and guidance from the more experienced part of the equation.
The injury to Alexander Isak will mean that there's an extended run in the team for Hugo Ekitike, which might be a welcome one. 11 goals already scored this season for Hugo Ekitike, who seems to have been a very good acquisition. He's got a lot of main character energy, hasn't he? He likes being the main man. In fact, only one of his 11 goals have been scored when Isak is also on the pitch. Does he actually prefer being up front on his own and being that star striker?
I would think so. I would think he's probably a little bit his nose put out of joint that Isak, all the noise was made about Isak coming in, and being the big news and the way forward for Liverpool. I think he's a good player. I think he scores good goals. I didn't really like the fact that he pulled his shorts around his ankles to celebrate his goal the other day. I didn't know what that was all about, but there we are. He carries Liverpool right now, and they need him to do a job. And and they've got good players in there. They've got good players in there, and Ekitike is a good player. And I think he's had his nose put out of joint a little bit by the idea that Isak was brought in, and he was sort of a bit part player, an £89 million bit part player that has to prove himself. And if Isak was fit and had been fit, he was going to be the mainstay.
It almost felt they bought him, then realised they could get Isak. Do you know what I mean? Was it ever really part of the plan that you would spend that much money on 2 strikers this summer?
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and you would have thought that Liverpool, weren't rushing to spend £125 million. But Isak is a good player, but he's not a worldwide superstar, is he? That's going to suddenly show you hundreds. No. Ability-wise, yeah, but not merchandising-wise. So if you're a football club going and saying, I'm going to spend £125 million, what's he going to give me instantaneously? Is he going to give me more bums on seats? Is he going to give me more merchandising opportunities? No.
I think they think over the 6 years of the contract.
Oh, guaranteed. If he is the player that he looked like he was at Newcastle and can make that step up from Newcastle to Liverpool, which is a different size and scale of football club, then no doubt. I mean, he's 26. So he should be at that stage now, and obviously the injury will take it away from him for a period of this season. He hasn't started well. Excuses are being made for the fact he wasn't fit for pre-season. Well, whose fault was that? But he hadn't slotted in well, and it might have been that this goal was the kick-starting of his opportunity at Liverpool. But, he'll have to come back in a couple of months' time and maybe close the show for them.
When you were 23, did you not ever celebrate by taking your trousers down and walking around with your pants hanging out? No?
No.
Sure?
That wasn't my leaning at that time, though.
Sure. Well, okay.
Pulling my pants up.
This is talkSPORT. You're listening to Matterface and Jordan with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the train go. Next, we'll be speaking to the Boxer CEO, Ben Shalom. talkSPORT, Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan, and we're here through till 1 o'clock this afternoon. Callum Simpson's defeat at the weekend, Troy Williamson upsetting the odds and the Leeds crowd to stop Simpson in brilliant fashion and win the British Commonwealth and European super middleweight titles. Another of the boxer fighters, Fraser Clark, recently lost to Jamie TKV. And Ben Shalom joins us now, the CEO of Boxer, to discuss all of the big issues around his fight stable. Hi, Ben.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, it is. You got there in the end. Yeah, it does feel like that. This time of the year, it's very difficult to work out what day and what time of day it is. Callum Simpson at the weekend, ahead on the judges' scorecard when he was stopped in the 10th round, succumbing to his first professional defeat in 19 fights. How is he? And has the rematch been ordered?
Well, he's devastated. It was an unbelievable fight up until the 10th round. It was an amazing atmosphere as usual for a Callum Simpson fight. But yeah, he left himself wide open for me all night. And that right hand was landing and was dangerous. And he got caught in the 10th, and a fantastic knockout win for Troy Williamson, who looks great at the weight. I've seen and spoken to Callum since. And yeah, of course he's devastated. But it makes for a big rematch, but you know there's a lot of improvements to do on his side because he did look vulnerable at times, and I felt like him and his corner team got it wrong.
There was a couple of conversations that I was listening to, Ben, about Callum at the weight and being big at the weight, and obviously he had a fight against Ivan Zuko previously, which was a battle, and I think he got dropped a couple of times in that fight, and there was a question about his punch resistance and perhaps the weight drain that he has to get to fight at super middleweight is challenging him. Is there any substance behind that kind of thinking, Ben?
Look, it's very easy to say that when you see the size of him at super middleweight, but there's no excuses. He made the weight perfectly. He felt great. He came in the ring extremely big. I think for me, the concern is how easily he gets hit. If you get hit in the super middleweight division by big punches, Ivan Zuko had won every one of his fights by knockout.
Yep.
Troy Williamson is notorious at the weight now for.
But he's a light middleweight, come up 2 weight classes.
Yeah, but look at his last performance against Mark Dickinson. We knew it was going to be tough. He looks big and strong in there, and ultimately, if you get hit at that level, it's going to hurt, and it has an opportunity to knock you out. I think for me, the concern is he's too easy to hit. He's too easy to hit. And if he boxed a different fight on Saturday night, I believe he would have won that fight. But he wanted to have a scrap. He wanted to entertain for the fans, and that's why we love him, and that's why he has such a big fan base. But the maturity wasn't there, and that can be said for his last 2 or 3 fights. He wants to blast people out, and it leaves himself exposed. And for me, that's what he's got to look at coming back next time.
Was that not a conversation you as a promoter would be having with his management after the Zuko win, where he was easy to hit in that fight, got dropped in that fight a few times, and the fact that he was fighting in front of his home crowd pulled him through to some extent? Is that not a conversation you'd have had prior to this particular fight, given the fact that you're now telling me that Troy Williamson is good at this weight, punches hard at this weight, and was a jeopardy fighter?
Listen, we wanted to make a very competitive fight. I know Troy Williamson was the underdog, but many people believed he could pull off an upset. Yeah, conversations are had, and it's been Callum fights with a lot of emotion. Ivan Zuko, as I said, was a knockout specialist at the weight, and he, as you said, he got put on the floor twice and came back due to, as you said, the courage and resilience that he showed, and he is the better fighter, and I think he shows that at times in every one of his fights. But yeah, it's something he has to work on. I think it's clear to see that if he uses his size and he uses his jab and he boxes in a mature way, he's a much better fighter than going in for a scrap and hell for leather. And although it's entertaining, it leaves himself exposed, and that's what he'll have to look at, and his team really need to look at.
Adam Azim is facing Gustavo Limos in January. What does 2026 hold for Boxer? What are the big highlights on the agenda for you?
Well, it's a huge fight for Adam Azim. It really is. I think Gustavo Lemos, for me, should have been world champion, should have beaten Richardson Hitchens. Did beat Richardson Hitchens, who's a current IBF world champion at the weight. So it's a massive step up. I think anyone in boxing can see that. It's a world level fight for a fighter that is knocking on the door now of world titles, and it's a huge night for BBC Two. It's a huge event at the Copper Box. Fran Hennessy will be back in a WBC final eliminator. Gladys Krause, who's our new signing, who I believe is the best light heavyweight and will be the best light heavyweight in the world. And then Lauren Price in Cardiff, and then we've got a heavyweight special in March. But it's been a big transition, as people know, onto the BBC, and the audience figures, I believe, will double, if not triple, the average slot on Saturday night. Simon will be glad to know the production was vastly improved as well, and things are very exciting at BBC right now. And
how's the relationship with Adam Azim, Ben? I mean, obviously, a lot of people have cast admiring eyes at Adam Azim, and there'll be overtures made to him, and there was inferences about, I saw Eddie talking to him after one of the fights and doing Eddie's usual shtick about what the value of his business is against other people's. You've lost a couple of fighters. You've lost Ben Whittaker to Matchroom. How secure are you in the relationship with Adam Azim, given the fact you've put a lot of time and effort into developing this young man's opportunities in life?
Well, Adam did have a choice. He did have a choice as to what he wanted to do with his future. He committed his long-term future to boxer. He's someone that we've developed from the very beginning. He's someone that we've kept extremely active. He's someone that we've got the right fights for at the right times. And for me, him and Moses Atoma are the two most talented prospects in British boxing. He'll box on January the 31st in a huge fight. God willing, he'll come through. And in May or June, he'll be back on the BBC. And then for us, we want him to be fighting for a world title next year. I think, look, Simon, what you have to understand is it works both ways. When there's a transition, a broadcasting transition, and there's more autonomy with a promoter and there's more autonomy as a business, we also have to make business decisions.
Of course.
We don't want broad fencers. We don't want fighters that don't want to have the big fights now. We don't want fighters that are going to make life extremely difficult and don't make business sense. We don't want fighters who aren't entertaining to watch. And so it is a transition and it is a reset. But it's a reset in a good way, and it's a reset on the national broadcast, and it's a reset in front of millions of eyeballs. And so every fighter who gets the opportunity, who we want to invest in and gets the headline on BBC Two, possibly BBC One next year, is going to want to do that, particularly those that believe in their ability and that believe in their ability to become household names.
What's your worldview, Ben, on the Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua circumstance? I mean, a lot of people talking about the discredit it does to boxing. I don't put it in the category of boxing. I put it in the category of entertainment, and Anthony Joshua being introduced to America as a media star. What's your overall view of what it does or doesn't do for boxing? Jake Paul being licensed in a fight that many people think that he shouldn't have been licensed to fight, in a commission that often does that. As a promoter, do you think it's a bad look for boxing, or are you thinking it doesn't really matter? It's not really what boxing's about.
I usually and have said in the past that things can be things, you've got to take it for what they are. But in this occasion, I do think it is a freak show, if I'm honest. I also think it's dangerous. I'm sat here as a boxing promoter and I see what goes on with the medicals before and after fights and how dangerous the sport is. And I saw Callum Simpson, the fight should have been stopped way before it was, but was in trouble on Saturday night. It's all a bit of fun and it's all a money grab until someone gets seriously hurt, seriously damaged. And then the whole sport comes into disrepute. For me, it makes a mockery of the sport of boxing. For me, no one in the industry wants to talk badly about it because everyone's lined, the pockets are getting lined. And when you look at that, and kids will look at that, and fans will look at that, and sponsors will look at that and think that is boxing, as I say, we're one punch away from something serious. And yeah, it's
Ben, on the flip side of that argument, mate, you will tell me that you knew that Chris Eubank wasn't right to go into that fight.
No, but let's be completely honest, right? Whatever you want to say about that fight, these are two experienced professional fighters. Chris Eubank Jr. has been in fights previously in his career where he's not been 100% for. You cannot justify a fighter who's come from a different background, who perhaps is very mediocre in the professional boxing sense, jumping up in weight division to fight a two-time world champion. It wouldn't be allowed in Britain, and it shouldn't be allowed. And I saw an article in, I think it was a Telegraph the other day, and then the guns and the money and this on the plane and how boxing is now being advertised. For me, it's a dangerous direction, and I think the sport should be respected. I genuinely believe that, and I'm not afraid to say it, and I know a lot of people are, but each to their own. But for me, it's not boxing. It shouldn't be advertised as boxing. And as I say, everyone can run for the money now, but all it takes is one punch, and that'll be the end of it.
What do you make of what's going to happen in 2026 as far as the landscape is concerned? You've talked about how you are trying to build a new transition into the BBC. Obviously, Netflix have started to go down the route of putting these events on that you've just talked about. Can you see them moving into the sport on a more permanent basis?
I don't think so. I think they're interested in those big global marquee spectacle rather than consistent traditional boxing shows. But I think in the UK we're in a really healthy spot. We've got shows going on every week, sometimes clashes, but shows going on every week, and fighters being built and fighters getting opportunities. I think the BBC deal for British boxing is a game changer because people will downplay it, but it's so necessary for the sport to get that oxygen and to get those eyes, and for real professional fighters who want to go into big fights with jeopardy. And yes, might sometimes lose, as Fraser Clark did, as Callum Simpson did, but that's what will bring people into the sport, I believe, into the professional sport. And I think boxing in the UK is in an extremely healthy place.
Ben, thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you. CEO of Boxer Ben Shalom joining us this afternoon. And don't forget that elsewhere in the world of boxing this Saturday is a mega showdown in Riyadh taking place. It's the Ring 5, Night of the Samurai. Brings you Japan versus the world, featuring the number one pound-for-pound king, Naomi Inoue. Watch it live this Saturday, only on DAZN, and the pay-per-view is included in the DAZN Ultimate at no extra cost.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Sign up now at dazn.com/boxing.
Next, we're taking a look at Pep Guardiola's comments that he's going to let his players indulge in Christmas.
Every spring, sports fans in Europe come together to celebrate arguably rugby's biggest annual tournament, the Six Nations. But why is it the home nations, plus France and Italy, and no one else? It all started back in 1871 when Scotland beat England in the very first international rugby match. A few years later, when they could field a team, Wales decided they'd host England and an idea was thought up. With Ireland keen, they formed the Home International Championship, which ran from 1883. In 1910, France was allowed to join, as they were developing into a serious rugby nation, and thus the Five Nations was born. France had an interesting history with the championship. They were actually booted out for paying their players in 1931, when the home nations were keen to keep it amateur. After World War II, though, France were let back in, but it remained a closed shop for more than 50 years. And when another country was let in, it was only really because the Five Nations' hand had been forced. Italy was developing into a serious contender, beating Scotland, France and Ireland twice in the same year, meaning in 1999 officials got together and said yes to Italy, and it became the Six Nations. So what changes, if any, come next? 7 nations? 8? A promotion and relegation system? Or should we leave it alone and let it remain the great rugby tradition it's become?
26k for 2026 on talkSPORT.
Christmas is just 2 days away. talkSPORT already looking ahead to the new year, and we're giving you the chance to win a massive £26,000, 26k for 2026. And here is how to enter. For your chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or you can call 0343 423 9761. Lines close at 12 p.m. on Friday the 9th of January 2026, and you'll need to answer your phone. If it rings then, UK residents, only 18 plus. It's a network promotion, and full terms and conditions are available at talksport.com. So for your chance to win, text WIN to 83338. Now, good luck. Christmas indulgence. We all do it. How hard do you come down on it as managers and players? Manchester City chasing an 8th straight win when they face Nottingham Forest live on talkSPORT Saturday at 12:30. They've been given 3 days off before it, but Guardiola has warned his players from piling on the pounds over Christmas. I mean, you'd have to eat quite a lot to pile on the pounds, wouldn't you, over 3 days?
Well, don't forget these guys are operating at such a low body fat content. They're probably in sort of 8-9% body fats. That if they do indulge, it will manifest itself relatively quickly. They'll put on 5 or 6 pounds pretty easy, won't they?
Pretty professional. They're not going to do
exactly that. So they're not going to do that, are they? So the point is, it's a substanceless observation. They're professional footballers playing for the elite club in English football that's dominated English football for most of the last 10 years, with a manager that understands what he expects his players to do. So it's a little bit of a throwaway comment to the media about he's going to allow them to indulge.
It's more important, actually, that they have got the 3 days off to reset their brains, I think, and that's what he was getting at when he spoke to the media yesterday.
Tomorrow training, the players asked me to take day off tomorrow. I said, no, because you didn't play good enough. So tomorrow recovery, train, the guy didn't play, and after 3 days off. You have 2 days to prepare Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, so the idea is that they have today, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off, and then they'll be back in on Boxing Day to prepare for the game against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I don't know, having a day off. I mean, the footballers do 2-3 hours a day, and they need a day off.
You're not having it.
But and the outside world will say, oh yeah, they're doing the day off. So when we're all running around in our lives, doing our jobs and working hard and do a good day shift, we go walk into our boss and go, can I have a day off? I did well yesterday. He'll be like, get into work and do your job like every other bugger. But not footballers.
But footballers do have to work Christmas Day usually. They train usually on Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's
and do you know what?
Real work,
we were talking about this on the Premier League All Access podcast.
Were you?
the former Chelsea defender Scott Minto. And we were discussing how those of us who work in the football industry are almost conditioned to work over Christmas, and we quite like it.
I've been conditioned to Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day. You know, you don't have off. You're in training or you're playing. You get used to it. You know, it's brilliant. There's no one on the road, so you can get to training very, very quickly. You have a short, sharp training session with a little bit of set plays. Depending on where you are, you might stay in a hotel Christmas Day night, or you just have the early training session. And sometimes we're given the option as to whether we want to train early and then we go home and then we open the presents, because a lot of the players, I wasn't one of them, had kids, or you train a little bit later in the afternoon. So you've done all the presents that way. But in terms of eating, I'd still have the turkey and roast potatoes, just make sure I have a lot of veg there as well. It wouldn't be chicken and pasta on Christmas Day. And you're looking forward to it, but you can't touch the alcohol where everyone else is getting drunk around you.
Yeah, of course. And I think that makes absolute sense. The one thing that he also talked about on that podcast was how there's certain games of the year that get the hairs on the back of your neck going up, and one of them is Boxing Day. And we love Boxing Day football. Boxing Day football is a staple diet of the...
Yes, and look what we've got this year. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
It's poor, isn't it?
It really is. Well, is it broadcaster-led?
Well, it must be something led, because once upon a time, Amazon were buying those packages and using them for Black Friday advertising, weren't they, in terms of sponsoring themselves by putting a full fixture list on Boxing Day so they could get the biggest retail days of the years attached to football. It's interesting that we talk about the hairs on the back of a neck when lots of footballers like to feign injury over Christmas so they can get a longer, protracted period of time. It's one of those staple diets that certain footballers... I know it's cynical. I know it's cynical.
Wow, that's it.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head about people inside this industry enjoying the fact that it gets them to be able to play games and have training sessions, because there's something about Christmas that always amazes me when people say, well, you get together with people you haven't seen all year. Well, there's a reason why I haven't seen them all year, because I didn't want to, right? So the fact of the matter is, one day of the year doesn't change that. So the fact that I had a football club gave me a ready-made excuse to be out the door.
The Premier League say that it's to do with the expansion of the European programme and the expansion of contracts and broadcasts, blah, 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 blah. And
it's a loss, though.
They're contracted to play on a Saturday and a Sunday, whatever.
Inch by
it's
inch.
a Friday.
Yeah, but it's
play a couple of extra games.
But when you distill it down, when you actually look back and step back and go, it's an inch by inch, yard by yard erosion of the fabric of the values of English football that were centred in what football represented to the paying public, which is games at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so the factories got turned out at 2 o'clock. I understand, I'm the major exponent of the world has changed, but the FA Cup finals being played at 5 o'clock and all of these things that are now different. So it's an erosion, like so many things in this country and so many things of our society that are changing and being eroded and managed into decline. The Premier League isn't declining, but the things that made football in this country so important, and one of them was the Boxing Day fixture. I'm not going to lose my mind about it, but it's a loss. I think it's a sad thing. Boxing Day football is brilliant. It's part of the entire fabric of English football. The unique moaning that the foreign managers had when they came in and saw the fixture list over Christmas, a game before Christmas, a game on Boxing Day, a game leading up to Christmas, to New Year, then a game on New Year's Day. These were what brought families together. These were what brought events and ultimately fan bases to be so fervent. And they're being stripped away in the pursuit of something else. And of course, now at the centre of that is European football. And European football, the major thing that created the biggest division in fans, or the biggest reaction in fans, was the European Super League. Put aside the argument of meritocracy. Put that back on the table. If meritocracy was in play, there wouldn't have been any issues. But the bigger fear was that European football is going to take precedence over domestic football. Well, here it is, in a different guise.
Well, do you know what? It is upsetting that there's only one Premier League game on Boxing Day. We will bring it to you live, Manchester United against Newcastle. It kicks off at 8 o'clock. Steve Bruce is going to be with me for that one, and I am very much looking forward to it. Yeah, he did the Bournemouth game with me the other night. Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm looking forward to working with him again on Boxing Day night. But there is live football, and there's lots of championship action. Birmingham Derby kicks us off at 12:30. We've got that one live. Millwall Ipswich, we're doing that one as well. Okay. We've got Round the Grounds with Adrian, Charlie, Adam and Jay Bothroyd from 2:30, because there's lots of EFL action during the course of the day. Did you? Yeah, I mean, look, there is lots of football, but I think the Premier League football over the course of that period is really important. It's like, I don't know, when I was a kid, I used to just love watching all of the games, didn't you?
Absolutely. Gives the Championship an opportunity to shine.
It does.
Because that's a wonderful league. And I think that in the past, I've always been quite critical of the idea that the Championship, when it was advertised on Sky, and I think Sky have done wonderful things for UK football. I think the starting gun of Sky being put in place rather than ITV changed the whole dynamics of football in this country and has elevated it to a different level and has made it the world leader. But I was always under this, unhappy impression that when they packaged the Championship, the Premier League was all bells and whistles and glamour, and then there was an old geezer with a rattle that celebrated the billing of the Championship. And I thought, you've got to make it more aspirational. Aspiration sells, and the Championship is a very aspirational league. Because look at the billionaires that own football clubs now. Look at the interesting people that are inside those football clubs. Look at the size of them, and look at the attendances of the Championship. So it's an opportunity for the Championship to take centre stage over the seasonal period, and a lot of people will watch Championship games that probably wouldn't normally watch them.
Maybe, or listen to them because they're live on talkSPORT, including Birmingham versus Derby, which kicks us off on Boxing Day, 12:30. Join us for that one. This is talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Next, we'll be looking at the big news regarding the English cricket team and a stag do. talkSPORT with Sam Matterface Simon Jordan. And England have launched an investigation into claims that their 4-day trip to the holiday resort of Noosa between the second and third Ashes Test turned into a beer-drinking stag do. Whose stag do was it? That's the big question. Drinking excessive amounts of alcohol for an international cricket team is not something I'd expect to see at any stage, says Rob Key, the England director of cricket. If they're drinking lots and if it's a stag do, all that type of stuff, that's completely unacceptable. I have no issue with the Noosa trip. If it was to get away and just throw your phone away, down tools and go to the beach, we added security. We've got enough ways of finding out exactly what happened. Let's speak to Andrew Miller, who is the UK editor of the ESPN Cricinfo website. We spoke to him on Sunday on Game Day Live, and there's been big developments since then. Hi, Andrew.
Hi there. Yes, developments everywhere in this shambles of a tour, unfortunately.
Indeed. Whose stag do was it, and how serious would it be if these reports turn out to be true?
Well, I don't think so much of a stag do as a wake for the Ashes, but it's a shambles. But I don't know what they really expected. You send a lot of athletic 20-somethings off to a beach bar for 4 days and expect them just to play tiddly-rinks on the sand. I'm not sure that was ever going to be particularly likely, particularly in the circumstances of the series, 2-0 down, a chance to recharge the batteries maybe, but. Yeah, it looked like a hiding to nothing. The optics, even before the rumours, and there are more than just rumours actually coming out of England's antics. The optics were terrible. I don't know what part of them thought that it would look like a good idea to have England just sitting around in beach bars for 4 days with the Aussie media hounding them at every opportunity, looking for an angle and clearly finding one.
But Andrew, is it not fair to say that the representation of England in the third Test was probably slightly better than in the first and second?
Yes, I think it probably was, but I also think that's probably a case of them actually getting a few games under their belt, a chance to get used to the conditions. I don't object to England going into the Ashes with a plan. They went into it with this with the mind first idea that they could get their heads right and the rest would follow. The trouble is their heads clearly weren't right in those first two tests, and therefore once they get to this opportunity to defuse a bit in the mid-series, the idea was England would be either competitive or leading the series, and this would be a chance to chill out and go hard into the Christmas period. What it's turned into, of course, is a bit of a wake for those first two games, and
but the optics of things are. I don't like optics being the way that you judge people, because ultimately the way the media judges things is not necessarily the way things are. But insofar as Brendan McCullum is concerned, you've got Rob Key on one hand saying that he intends to continue supporting him as long as he's in the position to do so. You've got a judgment call here, which clearly is under McCullum's brief. If the players have gone and decompressed in this way, and I'm not here to judge the rights and wrongs of it, I find it difficult to contest, having owned a professional football club, that it's of any use to people to go out on benders if they're professional athletes. You wouldn't see tennis players do it. You wouldn't see athletes doing it. So I don't see why footballers or cricketers need to do it. But is this situation now for Rob Key a challenging one, given the fact that he appears to support Brendan McCullum? If the optics are a concern for people, isn't Brendan McCullum's judgment of in a situation where it's now very questionable?
Well, yes. I completely hear what you're saying about optics. They shouldn't be important, but unfortunately they are, and particularly, I'm afraid, in this series when England arrived to media barrage. I don't think they were quite aware of quite how intense Australia's scrutiny would be on this team. I think most of them are first-time tourists, so there are only 5 of them have been on the Ashes tours before, and 3 of them were very minor parts in the last tour. So I don't think they expected it to be quite this intense. And I don't think England actually expected their team to be quite so lax. I think, we were talking on Sunday about the way that this culture has disintegrated. And a lot of the reason why England went into this Bazball era was they had a core of really senior players who knew how to do the basics. You had James Anderson and Stuart Broad, who've been around since the dawn of time. Senior players who knew how to behave, knew what the limits were, knew how to be professional and just get their job done, but also knew when to let their hair down. I think if you let a bunch of, not kids, but 20-somethings who are in a losing cause on their first tour, a little bit out of their comfort zone, I think, for the first time in this Bazball era, because a lot of the safety net had been lost by that stage. Ben Stokes had already teed off about his team being weak, which is an extraordinary statement from the captain, given everything he's done before. Everything about that suggested that this trip would be a disaster, and it looked like a disaster. I mean, apart from anything else, it just looked like forced fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but Noosa is my idea of hell. Give me 4 days to decompress after two losing matches. I'd find a dog and walk up a hill and disappear for 4 days. I would not want to be sitting on a beach and being expected to have chummy time with my teammates when actually I might just want to get my own headspace, frankly.
But actually, you know, the narrative, and Simon talks about the optics, the narrative is all going to be now about the stag do that they went on, and this was the reason why the Ashes collapsed. They'd already collapsed well before that, and as Simon said, the second day of the first test was a massive indicator that problems were going to be just around the corner. But the real issue here is the preparation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Very much so. I mean, but only in hindsight. And again, this is the problem we've got all along with this tour. England's plan was to go in there with minimal preparation, but an expectation of minimal standards of professionalism, based on the fact that Ben Stokes is a solid professional, Joe Root, model professional, England's leading run scorer, and again based on the precedent set by the previous era of this team, who were all senior pros who got torched on the last Ashes tour and vowed we're not going to do that again. We're not going to get hung up in the minutiae of trying to do the right thing. Let's just get our heads right and the rest will follow. England's heads were not right. The rest has not followed. And therefore, yes, the preparation was wrong. But equally, England's response to that preparation was wrong. Brendan McCullum admitted himself after the second test when he said we trained too hard. It sounded a dumb statement to say in the circumstances, but I kind of understood what he meant. They changed tack too quickly, and therefore players were, from 1 minute being told to relax, just relax into the series. Now train really hard, and now go off to Noosa and live it up for a bit. I mean, what's the messaging here? No one seemed to get a grip of the messaging, and you know, it's not the first time England have gone off the rails. It's not the first time drinking cultures have come to light on an Ashes tour. There was an infamous incident in 2017 tour when yes. Ben Duckett tipped a pint over James Anderson's head, and funnily enough, Ben Duckett appears to be back in the centre of things. There's a video doing the rounds that appears to be a little bit incriminating, let's say, and the ECB are
unverified at this moment in time.
Indeed, the ECB, however, have issued a statement saying we are aware of content circulating on social media, so they are acknowledging that there is something out there that could be a little bit damning for their team. Therefore, you know, again, it's just a matter of the messaging not being right from up top, I fear.
We'll see how it develops. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us again. Appreciate that. That's Andrew Miller, who's the UK editor of Cricinfo, ESPN Cricinfo, joining us live to talk about that reports of stag do behaviour by the England cricket team.
And we're done.
And we're finished. Merry Christmas to you.
And to you, mate.
Have a great time. And I'll see you in the new year, I hope.
Indeed.
That's Simon Jordan. He's back in a couple of weeks' time. I'll see you tomorrow for Christmas Eve with Scott Minto. And remember, tonight there's live football. And we've got Arsenal against Crystal Palace. It kicks off at 8.